Hello and welcome to the SuperShow podcast. And whilst it may be wet in the UK this week, it is warm and dry in our hearts because PlayStation put out a state of play yesterday. And so today on the podcast, we will be covering all of those announcements, extended reveals, extra little bits, things we already knew all about but got to see more of, and all of the rest. Jamie.
Is warm and dry a good thing? Like, that makes it sound arid, and like it's actually a rather unpleasant place to be. It's warm, it's dry, it's flaking, and it's cracked.
No, not warm and desolate and desiccated. Just like it's warm, it's dry. You don't want to be damp, and also metaphorical heart. Obviously, your actual heart should be wet. It'd be bad if that was dry.
Well, that's true. I think it makes more sense if I think of a heart as an item of food that doesn't need to be fridged. It just needs to be somewhere,
kept in a warm, dry place.
Dry. Exactly. Yeah.
I
don't know. I don't like the idea of my heart being wet. Actually, now you put it that way, I don't want. It has to be by its nature, but I don't like it.
Wet and sticky like a heart. Anyway, we are a video game podcast. If you didn't know, we're on YouTube and Twitter at SuperShowPod, but we are also available across your audio platforms. I'm talking Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts. You can also check us out, paisleyradio.com, Thursdays 10 p.m, repeated on Mondays at 10 p.m. We're going to keep it simple this week. We're going to pretty much talk about PlayStation, their state of play. There were some cool things to be seen. There were some less cool things to be seen. But we're going to get to it, Jamie. I think that's the best way to go about this. Sure. It was last night at 11 o'clock British time. I don't know what that is in American time, like 6 o'clock in the afternoon or something.
Well, it depends where you are, doesn't it?
That's very true. Are you East Coast or West Coast? How does it hit?
You're a West Coast warlord.
Maybe, very much maybe. We got kicked off in absolute style, I must say. Astro Bot coming in, showing us some lovely DLC, some speed running that you're going to be able to do, and some other bots that you're going to be able to rescue in that game, of which I have not yet played any of.
Yes, I know. Which I'm keen to remind you of at every available opportunity, because it might end up being my game of the year at this point. But yeah, it was a great way to kind of kick off the show. It barely even kicked off the show, right? Like, it was almost the precursor to the show, the prologue, because they kind of did like a late dramatic title reveal after Astro had their segment. But yeah, like I'm not a speedrunner by any means, but the speedrunning challenges and keeping half an eye on the leaderboards was fun to do in Astro's Playroom, so I look forward to doing that again. It's great. Of course, it should be free. They'd have a tough time charging for it, but I'm glad that it's free. And of course, having new bots to collect is going to be exciting. The only thing I hope, I will say with an asterisk, is that they say 10 new bots to rescue. And this is a trick they do pull in the base game. I hope that 4 of those bots aren't slightly different Helldivers, and it's actually like 6 bots and 4 Helldivers, because they pull that trick a couple of times in the base game, where it's like however many bots, and also like 8 of them are different coloured Loco Roco balls.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that does feel a little... Because you think it's going to be different bots, it's going to be different characters. You don't necessarily think it's going to be characters who are different, but are all in the same game. That's a little bit cheeky. Absolutely. Yeah, right, I kind of get you on that.
Exactly.
Although I did think the Helldiver bots looked pretty cool.
They do look cool. Like, I never thought of Helldivers as a game that would suit the... Astro Bot's not quite chibi kind of art style.
It's a little bit.
There's something about the shrunken down form and the larger heads that actually makes Helldivers look quite endearing. I'd play that game. I'd play like a cutesy version of Helldivers.
I'd also agree with you. I'm not much of a speedrunner, but Astro's Playroom was a game that I did try and like nail some of those sort of little speedrun challenges. It really lends itself to that, and I'm gonna go on a limb and say before next week's pod I will have played some Astro Bot.
Does that have anything to do with this week's pod being filmed or recorded or broadcast even at the end of the month, and next week's pod taking place inside October?
Oh, yes, it does.
I wondered if that might be the case.
Yes, exactly. So it's nice. So I'd maybe talk about Astro Bot a little bit next week. That'll be exciting.
I look forward to it.
Next up on the State of Play, we got to look at The Midnight Walk, which is the latest game from Moonhood Studios, the guys who brought you Lost in Random, which was a pretty terrifying claymation looking game straight from the mind of Tim Burton. It looked very Nightmare Before Christmas, don't you think?
I should say, you mean looked like it was from the mind of Tim Burton, not actually. Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
I was like, was that a title card that I missed during that trailer?
No, looked like it could have come. Allegedly looked like it could have come from a Tim Burton game.
Yeah, that will save us from any potential lawsuits. Allegedly, it looks like I agree, though. It did look like something of that ilk, and I also agree that it was like surprisingly creepy. It's one of those things. The reason I think that Tim Burton's actually a pretty apt thing to mention is because the claymation approach to the art style actually enhanced the creepiness. It just made some of the designs of some of the characters and again potentially enemies. I couldn't get that big closer grasp on what kind of game this might be. Looked really unsettling at times. If I had to guess it, I mean, was the vibe that you got that this was a third-person sort of, let's say, platformer that could also be played in VR in the same way that something like Lucky's Tale or Astro Bot Rescue Mission could be. But then there were
I think
also
that's exactly what the vibe I got. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but there were. Do you remember there were also bits that looked like they were from a first-person perspective, where there were hands out in front and holding a torch? Like, how do you think that fits into the bigger picture?
I can only maybe they move different what's the word? Different perspectives. That's the word. Maybe they do switch to certain things. Like if you do go through a section where you have to use a torch, or wasn't there a bit where you have like a match as well? Did I see that or something?
Yeah, there was a lot of different lighting effects.
Yeah. There was also first person, so I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they switch it up and maybe they change up the perspective to just give the game a little bit more atmosphere, dependent upon the situation. Because I always find like if you play VR games with that 3D perspective, especially like platformers, I find them endearing. I find them cute. I think everything looks phenomenal. The second you put me into that first person perspective, I think because of your distance to everything is so much closer, it's a lot easier to kind of notice the cracks, not literal cracks, but like the cracks in the design or lack of texture. Whereas if you just give me that slightly over the top, like everything's a little bit further away, I think it does so much. Like Moss and Moss 2, I think were phenomenal. Like playing in VR, those games, they are absolutely incredible. And I just think that is just switching that perspective a little bit. So maybe that's what they do here. Maybe they play around with perspective and don't stick us in one view for the whole thing.
Yeah, and I guess that would then potentially make sense with the alternate perspective stuff being essentially, let's call it first person. Like maybe there is that Moss style idea that yes, there is this character that you are directly controlling, but then also you are technically maybe a character that somehow fits into this as well. You are both a spectator and a participant. I think that's a potentially cool way to do third-person games in virtual reality. But then also it has to totally work outside of virtual reality because it is just playable on a regular PS5 as well. So we'll see.
That's something that caught my attention actually, because I think there needs to be more of that. I don't think they do that enough. Like games being VR specific or being not VR at all. If more companies can kind of close that gap, it would make a lot more. I don't know, because it wouldn't stop me wanting to play a game because it is VR only. I might want to play it, but then I've got to think like, am I going to actually outlay for the cost of the headset to play it? Probably not. But if I find that I've got 10 games already that I've bought because they're good games and I can play them all in VR, suddenly that's a hell of a lot better prospect for me to actually picking up a headset personally.
It does help as a value proposition to know that you have access to essentially two different versions of the same game. I just wonder if from a design perspective it's incredibly difficult to scale and scope out games for both formats. Like we're going to talk about a VR title in a couple of minutes that, again, you look at the last entry in that series and that was non-VR and just what they're capable of in terms of their scope, what they look like in terms of their visual fidelity, completely different kettle of fish, and there's 5 years between them.
It's definitely not possible with all games for sure. One game that it probably wouldn't, it might be possible with, actually. They could have maybe done it. Hell is Us. which was a pretty creepy looking sort of modern but with historical supernatural vibes. It was like an art, like a Crusader knight sort of style meets a freaky horror game. Do you know what it made me think was Silent Hill, like that kind of horror.
Okay.
Then shove some Death Stranding down that throat, right? And now take, I don't know, Kingdom Come Deliverance and package that all up together and go, here's a game. It was weird.
It's interesting that you got medieval and kind of like knights.
It was the swords and the axes and stuff was giving me that vibe.
But then there were like laser swords and drones. And I don't know, like some of the shots at the beginning of kind of war-torn environments, and there's one particular shot of a number of bodies kind of all piled up that for me gave me, like, to put it bluntly, World War II energy.
Right. But then I also got, what was the Soccer Mum game? Returnal. I also got really strong Returnal. I think it was mainly like Death Stranding meets Returnal, but then with like the other elements thrown in. It was a weird mishmash, but I was kind of digging it.
Yeah, like I thought it was interesting too. Maybe a little bit eclectic, but at the same time, none of the games that you just mentioned are bad. In fact, they're all good.
They are.
So, that they're not, rough, things to draw inspiration from.
I challenge you to watch that trailer again, thinking Death Stranding, and don't immediately see bridges. Don't immediately see the BT on the shoulder with the little like there was so much Death Stranding that immediately. And then it went on a bit of a meander, which I wasn't expecting with the freaky, white-bodied, faceless things.
Right, the weird enemies, yeah.
Yeah, but definitely an interesting prospect. I love a new IP. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah. That's what was encouraging about the first handful of minutes of the state of play, is that you go in expecting to see updates and new trailers from games that you've been made aware of in the past. And there is something of an expectation that even if there are any quote-unquote new announcements to be made, that it might have been leaked or hinted at in the past. And like the Midnight Walk and Hell Is Us were two sort of really out of left field, visually intriguing new IPs that, it remains to be seen how they land. But I thought it was a promising start to the stream, to the showcase that I'm not going to say it went south very quickly for me, but... it struggled to maintain that tempo, perhaps.
I totally agree with you. I think that it had the opening had a certain fresh feel, and it did go a bit south in the middle. I do think some of the other things we're going to talk about before we get onto that sort of like middle claggy section, I'm going to call it.
Claggy, I like it.
Were pretty decent. So, because next up we had Metro Awakening VR, which is obviously based on the Metro games and novels, which is coming out in November. So that's coming out on the 7th. Don't have to wait too long for that. That is a game which is like VR and Metro probably go together. Like I'm sure there's been others. Metro, have there been Metro VR stuff before, or is there not?
I'm not sure there has. I know what you mean. Surprising. It feels like something that should exist, but I actually don't think it does.
I think it's because the mask and the respirator. It's like it seems to go hand in hand, right?
Right, literally, like you mentioned it, like the mask, and exactly like you said, changing the sort of the filters on the respirator, wiping your mask when it gets too like foggy or steamed up or gets too wet. The map being like a physical thing that the character pulled out in front of their eyes, and then using a lighter in their offhand to see the map when they're in dark environments. So much of that had that kind of tactile quality that you expect for VR versions of games when they're trying to look for more gestures and more interactions for players to kind of have that slightly more tactile experience. And yet, I don't think there has been a VR Metro game up to this point. That said, this was what I was referring to earlier when we were talking about the idea of something that's playable in and out of VR. I mean, Metro Exodus, I believe, was the last fully fledged Metro game, 5 years old now, and that was at times it wasn't an open world game, but that was an open zone game. That was a hub game, and you look at some of those hubs, and you look at their size and their scope and the way you can relatively freely explore them. You look at some of the pretty advanced technology they implemented in that, from the ray tracing, that I'm not sure if it ever got quite to sort of like path tracing level, but they were always trying to push the boundaries with that game in subsequent updates. I'm not saying that the Awakening looked rough around the edges by any means, but it's still one of those things where you watch the trailer for Metro Awakening VR and you're like, right, that's why there's probably not going to be a time anytime soon where you have a VR and a non-VR version of a first-person shooter. Because as soon as you take a VR FPS out of VR, I think it underwhelms, really, based on just what the genre is doing elsewhere.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Like any VR shooter that I've played or seen, yeah, wouldn't really work as crossover. I think that's just because what you're doing is so different, and what they have to do in game is so different. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think they've sort of got a crossover that works well necessarily for that yet. Unlike 3D platformers, which work very well.
Surprisingly so, yeah.
Then we had Arcade Chronicles. I was struggling to. I thought it was Arc Ace when I saw the title come up for this. I don't know why. I was like, is that a C or a G? It was just weirding me out. But Arcade Chronicles was a sort of high fantasy, very cool looking. Was it? Did they say whether it was like an MMORPG? Because that was this real strong vibes that I was getting.
So Arcade is an MMORPG, a Korean one that has been out for a very long time.
Right.
This Arcade Chronicles, I believe, was originally pitched as Arcade 2 and has now since been, I guess, like rebranded to Chronicle. I have to presume that some of the same like components to the Arcade formula, like the MMORPG setup with house ownership and farming, and I'm reading a lot of this, by the way. I haven't played this game. Mounts and pets, crafting, PvP zones, and stuff like that. Are all going to be a big part of the game, but this seemed to focus more on like broader MMORPG kind of co-op, almost like raiding. Looked like a number of different players sort of teaming up together to go up against big bosses, and like a lot of Korean MMORPGs, it looked quite nice. Like you look at it and say, yeah, like some of the combat looks familiar in this kind of post-Dark Souls era, but strong, and some of the visuals are strong, but at the same time, I'm like, I feel like I could count on now two hands the amount of MMORPGs or just MMOs from the Eastern world that have impressed me visually with a trailer that I've never touched. Like, you only have to look at something like Black Desert Online, and like, right. I feel like every E3 for about 6 years, I'd go, oh my god, this looks good. What is this? Oh, it's Black Desert Online. I'm never going to play that.
But it looks good. But I like the look of it.
But it looks good.
But then, hey, that's what we thought about Black Myth Wukong, even though I was always hopeful.
Yes, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And actually, weirdly, I think a couple of the like boss fight elements of this did remind me a little bit of the look of Black Myth Wukong, actually, which is not a bad thing. But no, yeah, I thought it looked very good. I'm getting weird at my old age, because when I thought it looked like an MMORPG, I was like, I think I've got space in my life to for the first time ever, get involved in an MMORPG. Make my character do some grinding, do some farming. Maybe I'm getting strange, but
something that you check back in on, like play half an hour or an hour of a day, like you do your dailies. And, yeah, okay.
Do a raid.
What do you think it's going to be? Like, are you going to dip back into... Well, I say dip back into... I don't know if you ever played WoW. But...
I think I created an account, and then I don't think I did anything else. No, I quite like that's why I quite like the look of something like Arcade, because I think it looked a bit more in the action than what like WoW or something like that. And obviously WoW's quite old now, so...
Yeah, if you want one that's coming out this fall, the console port of New World is releasing, I think, in November. Ooh. It's called New World Eternum. I played the beta of it a couple of weeks ago, and actually, it looks a bit rough around the edges in the way that you sometimes expect MMORPGs to do, not being too harsh. But I didn't have a terrible time with it, like for that one weekend. That's out in October, actually, not November.
Oh, there you go. Even sooner.
I mean, maybe if you wanted to give that a go. I don't know if that's a game that's worth buying on a whim with everything else that's coming out at the moment, but...
That's very true. That's very true. Also, you said that comes out October?
Yes, October 15th.
How am I ever going to have the time to play that, Jamie, when Palworld is coming to PlayStation 5 and is out now?
Yeah, wow. It's weird. If you'd have told me in... What was it? When was it? It was January at the top of the year when this game was like the biggest game on the planet for a moment. It felt like
it was.
This would get a surprise drop on PS5, and I could not and I would not care less, then actually I would say I wouldn't believe you, but no, I would believe you because I've never really been particularly moved by Palworld either whether it's sort of its art design, its aesthetic, or its sort of its gameplay pitch. And yeah, I'm happy for people that have been sat around for the past 8 months waiting for this, wanting to play it on their console of choice. But I'm not one of those people.
No, me either, to be fair.
Okay.
It's Pokemon with guns. It sounds all right, but yeah, Pokemon's not really my thing anyway. So Pokemon with guns wasn't really going to move the needle, unfortunately. Sorry, Palworld. Sorry, Pocket, what they called? I can't remember. Is it Pocket Games? Something like that.
Pocket Pair.
Pocket Pair, which is
yeah.
Everything is so close to Pokemon, isn't it?
They're being sued now.
Oh, they are.
You see, yeah, the Pokemon company filed a lawsuit.
Finally, is when they were bringing it
inside the last week.
I wonder if that's because they found out they were bringing it to console, and they're like, "You've gone too far. That is too bold. You need to rein it back."
Maybe. I actually, inversely, I like the boldness of sticking to this slot in the state of play and being like, "No, we're still going to keep that slot, and we're still going to release on PS5, as scheduled and as planned. We're not scared of the Pokemon company or Nintendo. They can come after us all they want." That's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye out for.
Well, because in some respects, like on Steam is one thing, but then making Pokemon with guns available to other consoles, you've got to feel that Nintendo are starting to think, no, you're getting too close to our territory. So whilst maybe they were like, look, it's PC, it's different, whatever, we're not going to go there. Maybe they think they'll have more chance when it's in their area. I don't know. I don't know enough about litigation.
Maybe. I don't know either, but I know what you mean. It doesn't seem very like Nintendo are usually very litigation sort of like heavy.
Litigious. They are, aren't they?
Yeah, very litigious. And the idea that they've been sat around for 8 months twiddling their thumbs, saying "will we, won't we" when it comes to filing this lawsuit. I don't know. Maybe they were just doing as much homework as possible. Maybe, and I don't know. But yes, they filed a lawsuit on September 18th, so a week ago today. An injunction against infringement and compensation for damages on the grounds that Palworld, a game developed and released by the defendant, infringes multiple patent rights. So it's a patent battle. So yeah, be interesting to see how that plays out.
It will be, yeah. Cause they couldn't just like shut them down, could they? I suppose they could just get loads of their money, loads of their lovely money. Rob, maybe they could just close them down. I don't know how that.
See, I only really know like the only thing I can think of is what happens when Nintendo go after the people who produce emulators and stuff like that. And then in that case, yeah, usually it is the case that they give Nintendo a bunch of money and agree to stop all developments and operations immediately. That happened this year with a very popular Nintendo Switch emulator, which I can see, I can totally see why Nintendo would go after something like that, because whilst emulators, of course, can often exist in a grey area, and the extent to which they use anything like in a sort of illegal way is often hard to define and probably harder to prove. But that was a very, very good and very popular Switch emulator that at one point was running fairly well and not remotely difficult to install on a Steam Deck. And you kind of got to the point where you could, if you were happy, of course, the piracy then becomes the issue. But let's say, you weren't a pirate. Let's say you had some way of, you bought Nintendo Switch games yourself and you ripped those cartridges yourself using this piece of technology that, that does exist, and you didn't have any nefarious plans for it whatsoever. You just wanted to play the Nintendo software that you owned on another platform. You could, certain games ran better than others, but yeah, you could, in a lot of cases, very comfortably play Nintendo Switch games on a Steam Deck, which I think was probably what pushed Nintendo over the edge. And they were like, nope, we're filing.
That is too much. Well, hey, from pals out there to pals of ours, because I want to take a little moment at this point in the show to reflect on some awesome individuals. But actually, do you know what? Before I do that, I'm going to give a shout out to some of the people in chat who have been chatting up a storm while we've started talking about the PlayStation State of Play. I also want to just say, Adam Nichols in chat just said, the Pokemon Company filed a patent on game mechanics, throwing a ball and capturing a creature, only days before they filed the lawsuit. They filed the patent just so they could sue Palworld. So yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Well, we said they were litigious. That probably takes the cake.
Indeed. So yeah, so I want to give a shout out to some people in chat. I'm going to give a shout out to Magni, 69DJ, John Meehan, Nick Leaks, Classy Cat, Wesley. I can't say. Sorry, Wesley. I can't say his second name.
It's pronounced Snipes.
Thibodeau. I don't know. Adam Nichols is in chat. Leo Dunlop. Thank you everyone for joining us, for chatting away. I am reading. I read at the same time. I can do two things at once, multitasking. Actually, that's not true. I wait until Jamie talks, then I read the chat. And then I sometimes miss what Jamie says because I'm laughing at what you guys are saying. So
it's never that important, so don't worry about it.
Adam said that I'm not getting weird because I'm old. I've always been weird, apparently, when I said
I would second that.
Also, what is OSRS? 69DJ saying they play OSRS. I don't know what that is.
Oh God, it's old school RuneScape.
Oh, okay. I've never played RuneScape.
I wonder if RuneScape is one of those things where you get to grow up at a certain time and almost be a part of a certain generation. Like I played a fair amount of RuneScape, and a mutual friend of ours, Zach, formerly of Football Daily, massively into RuneScape, or was massively into RuneScape. Has a lot of fond memories of it.
I do remember it because I've been caught out multiple times when people talk about RuneScape, and I thought they were talking about Rune, the old game, and I'd be like, "Oh, I love Rune," and they're like, "Oh yeah, cool," and then oh no, we're talking about two totally different games.
Yes, well, it's because you're one of the only people on the planet who still loves and preaches the good word of Rune.
It blew my mind. That game genuinely blew my mind, and I've talked about it multiple times in the podcast. I'm not going to talk about it now. I'm not going to bore everyone with more stories of an old game that you can buy on Steam that no one cares about.
The two things I associate with you and with no one else are Rune,
Evolve,
and that. Well, but sometimes Evolve.
Right.
But I was thinking of that Ryan Phillippe movie that
Where the Gun.
Where the Gun, yeah.
If you haven't seen Where the Gun, go and watch it. It's wicked. And if you want another film that no one's ever seen, Thursday with Thomas Jane is cracking, and no one has ever seen. And do you know what? Thursday.
They are the two Joniest movies, yeah.
But this blew my mind. And this is to show you how, like, a different time. I bought my brother the DVD. No, I bought my mate the DVD of Thursday, and it cost me. I think I managed to get it from Sweden, and it was a tenner. But in English, it's like £60 because it was just nowhere. No one had it, and it was so rare.
Yeah.
But now you can just get it because the weird stuff's happened. You can stream movies. It's so freaky.
It's the power of this thing they call the internet.
Yeah, I bet you could watch both of those movies on YouTube for free anyway, because probably like no one knows about them, so they probably don't get flagged for content violation.
Exactly, yeah. Doesn't pop up on the things.
Yes, it's a strange new world. But I would like to give a shout out to some other people that are part of this strange new world. They are, of course, our patrons who have gone over to patreon.com/SuperShow to support us. If you give as little as $2 a month, you can join our Discord. Oh my God, why can't I talk? Discard? What's that? Discard? It's like a Canadian accent.
That's when you throw something away.
Like a discard.
No, it's when you discard something. It's when you get rid of something.
But you could also like have a discard where you could throw it at people and it's like a diss that you don't even need to say, you just throw it at them. Like,
okay.
Double
S.
S.
Has gone in a weird direction. Okay. I'm imagining like a variation of the character Gambit, except instead of throwing playing cards, he like writes down insults on pieces of paper and throws them at people.
Twat.
Yeah.
Just lobs them at your face. Doesn't explode.
Yourself.
Smacks you.
Yeah.
There you go.
Like when Random Task throws the shoe at Austin Powers.
Who throws a shoe? Honestly.
Yeah.
You will see.
Fight like a woman. You can. Is that a joke you can still make?
Yeah. That as long as you mean really well.
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. I do remember there was a whole campaign of trying to get people to stop saying "quote unquote" like a girl, as if like you should stop saying you throw like a girl or you kick like a girl or stuff like that. I do remember that being a movement at one point.
I must admit, I try and do that. Like if my kids, because I have two boys, if they bust out like a girl or you're a girl, I do say to them things. I've said to them before, like, what do you mean like a girl? Like, and they're like, oh, because girls aren't strong as boys. And my kids are only little. And then I say like, I bet your mum could kick your ass. They're like, that
is true.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. I'm like, just saying.
It might become a case for Child Protective Services, but she would be able to do it.
I didn't say she did. I said she could.
Oh no, I'm not throwing out any accusations. Don't worry.
She gets well. She gets well. This is an aside. So my wife, when not probably on a similar level to I was as a gamer when we were younger, but then she fell off hard like into our 20s. Like we used to game together. Like she was better at COD than I was when we first got together, whatever. But
Nice.
now, if my kids need help with anything in a game, it's Dad, can you help me do this bit? They never ask my wife, and she gets livid because she is a much better gamer than they are. But they're like, no, Mum, you can't do it. And she's like,
She should set the record straight. Rip the Switch
should.
out their hands one day and just be like, watch this, and then
we should
complete
play
the level or beat the boss or whatever it is.
we used to play loads of COD with bots.
Yeah.
Like with the waves of bots, and she'd always get more kills than I would. Or maybe I should bust out that like split screen COD with bots, and then we can say, go on then, see what your bot kill KD is, kill counts. I like
Get your infant children to 1v1 your wife on Rust and see who the real, who really wears the trousers. Yeah.
That'd be funny. I'd be up for that. Although the 8-year-old's getting too good at Super Smash Bros. and Street Fighter 5.
Okay, that's worrying.
Yeah, I do that dad thing. If I go like the little one cries sometimes because he's like, "You beat me all the time. It's not fair." And I'm like, "Come on, give me the controller." And I did that the other day, and he beat me in the first match of Street Fighter 5. And I was like,
who's he maining in Street Fighter and in Smash?
Oh, just for your generation, I'll say it properly. Ryu, he's maining in Street Fighter.
Thanks.
And Smash is usually Link with the sword.
Okay.
Or maybe. Oh, is it
Captain Falcon?
No, is it? What is his name?
The Wii Fit trainer.
No, the Pokemon, the psychic Pokemon. Mewtwo. Mewtwo. I think Mewtwo's in there, isn't he? I think he likes Mewtwo.
That sounds like something that would be in Smash. I really can't. I'm going to ask the dumbest question. Has there been a Smash since Ultimate?
I don't know. We've got the. What one did we play? I didn't get the latest one, I don't think. I got the one which is where they all go weirdly glassy-eyed and turn evil.
Yeah, that is the latest one. Ultimate.
Oh, okay. So I thought there was one since then.
No, because that's the only one that's ever been on Switch. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't misremembering, because it's been 6 years since Ultimate, and
wow, okay.
I'm not going to necessarily say they're due for another one, and they actually got a good amount of DLC out, and they spread that DLC over a pretty long amount of time, if I remember correctly. There was that period of time again where like every stream you would go to would be like, what's the which character are they going to reveal this time?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, it's Joker from Persona. Haha! Everyone get excited. You know what? Actually, as someone who didn't play Smash, I actually enjoyed that era more than I thought I would. But there we go.
Yeah, and it's cool. It's a very good Smash game, to be fair. I'm not slagging off at all, but it does annoy me when it takes me a minute to beat the older kid. Anyway, from my kids to our collective children of the channel. Let's go there. That's a bit weird. There are some names on screen right now of some awesome people who've gone to support us over at patreon.com. I'm going to give a shout out to some as well. I'd like to give a shout out to Aaron Cameron, Athletic Gravy, Brimstone, Ice Knock Rock Salt, Jesper Camdown Nielsen, Pastors Guild, Xander GTI, and the big dogs, the members of the board, our Super Smash Bros, if ever there were any. It's Brett Z, aka Shellshock, Geometric Potter, Hacksaw McReed, Manuel Guerrero, and Peaswad.
Thank you
very much. You absolute legends.
Yes.
And before we get back to the state of play, would you like to talk about what you've been playing since the last time we chatted? I don't care. And
about what I've been playing?
Yeah. But and real gamers shouldn't either. But
no one listening will care. So I've been playing.
I want to
No, you don't, and you're absolutely right. No one else does either, because it's EAFC 25, which releases in full this Friday. I've been playing it for about a week or so, and I think it's solid. It's very similar to EAFC 24 in a lot of its fundamentals, but the thing I will say is that the kind of headline additions, let's call them, to the game that they usually roll out whenever there's a new entry in the series, are actually quite meaningful this time. So I'll give them credit where it's due in that front.
Insofar as, is that game modes or is that?
One of them is gameplay related. One of them is game mode related. Gameplay related. I apologize for getting in the weeds, talking inside baseball about football. But yeah, there's a thing called like FCIQ now, which basically completely reworks the way tactics are implemented in the game. Like tactics have always been not a small part of the FIFA or EAFC formula. Like formations and player roles have always been a thing, but they've been kind of taken up a notch. A number of positions have been completely taken out of the game, and now it's more about defining certain player roles based on how your team is shaped up when you do have the ball and when you don't have the ball, which kind of brings it more in line with a lot of the discussions that are happening around the game at the moment, like in real football terms. This idea of a false back, which is a full back who inverts to become a centre back when you kind of have possession of the ball, which maybe allows the full back on the other side to push forward into midfield, into centre midfield, to transition you into essentially a back three. Or like people might remember Liverpool's team from a couple of years ago with Mane, Salah, and Firmino. This idea of like a false nine in the middle that drops slightly deeper to allow the two wingers to kind of invert and then become inside forwards and make overlapping runs. That stuff is now a lot more front and center in the way you set up your team. So like the center forward position has actually now been completely removed. No player is a center forward anymore. Instead, to achieve that similar result, you put a striker in a position and you give them a role that will determine kind of which areas they operate in and how they function, again, with or without the ball. So that changes gameplay. And there's also a new mode called Rush, which is a fast-paced 5v5 FIFA mode that really is what Volta should have been from the start. Volta, I think, was a little bit too nostalgic for FIFA Street and wanted to implement that kind of like cage football, skills and tricks sort of style, but the engine never quite worked for it. This is really just excuse me, like a slimmed down distillation of the FIFA formula that, because it's 5v5 and on a much smaller pitch, is much more fast paced, almost akin to basketball, and it's actually quite fun. And they've worked that into multiple modes. Like you can do Rush in Ultimate Team, you can do Rush in clubs with your friends, you can do Rush in manager mode, in career mode, where it functions as a tournament for the players in your youth academy. So yeah, there's interesting new stuff. Gameplay fundamentals, though, in a lot of cases remain the same. It's also a little bit buggy out the gate. A lot of issues with the UX at the moment. A lot of menus that get soft locked. There was a patch that rolled out today in time for launch that I haven't tested yet, but hopefully that means things are okay for Friday for the 2 people listening to this who are going to buy it.
Well, there you go. So is there so then, because they did introduce a few versions ago, they introduced the mode, as you were talking about there, where you can play as one specific character online, right? Like you can be the winger, and you're like, then you stay as that position for the whole game.
That mode has been around for actually a fairly long time now. That's called Pro Clubs. Pro Clubs is the 11 versus 11 variant of it. Yeah.
Well, my question was, so do you have situations where there are 11 human players on one team and 11 human players on the other team, and everyone on the one team is talking on mics and stuff?
Well,
and there's one little, because in my mind, this would be me, even playing FIFA. They'd be like, right, I was always a defender. You're a defender. You're right at the back to the right of and I just wouldn't see the ball. I'd just probably be sat on the floor, picking grass, picking a daisy, picking off its petals. So do you have that?
Yeah, it's always the problem as soon as you have like more than 6 or 7 people. I don't know if you remember this at all, but like when we were still at the company we worked for previously, doing all-time gaming, Football Daily, which was a football YouTube channel that we worked alongside, they had a spin-off channel that had a series of Pro Clubs videos.
Didn't watch it.
And they went out. Oh, do you not remember though? They went out and bought like 10 PS4s and would set them all up alongside each other. So there was and there's another set of influencers and celebrities who are doing that at the moment. It's a team. They don't meet up in person. They do it all online. But there's a team called Girth and Turf that is, yeah, I know, that is, somewhat popular, probably mostly in the UK at the moment, though, that I believe is run by two influencers, one called Angry Ginge and the other called Philly. But like they've had like Wayne Rooney on there, and they've had like some rappers on there and stuff like that, like H and whatnot, and
From Steps.
yeah, like no, a different AIG.
I'm joking. I'm not that old. I know you mean.
Well, you are that old actually. But,
no, I am, but I know who H is.
Okay. So yeah, like that's Pro Clubs is a thing. It's one of the more neglected modes in the EAFC roster, but it remains very popular because, as you could probably imagine, like playing, well, not always 11v11, but even if you just have like 3, 4, 5, 6 friends and you all group up and you all create your character and you all play a certain position and you're rewarded with XP and you level up and your character gets better and you go up through a league system. Like, it's engaging, it's rewarding. It's the most fun I've had in FIFA across the last decade, consistently at least.
You answered my next question as well. I was going to say, is it divorced from the FIFA name now? Have we moved on to being EAFC 25?
No, it's fully divorced.
And you called it FIFA, so there we go.
Because I'm an idiot with a bad memory.
I still call Twitter X. I still call X Twitter. Like I think we're all like it. I think once we get used to something, it's so hard to lose it. I think it's true. FIFA for donkey's years.
Yeah, they'll have a tough time with it. That will become especially confusing when the real FIFA inevitably signs some kind of deal with probably 2K, and we do end up with another FIFA on the market that's not the same as the old FIFA. That'll be fun.
It will be. So, anything else you've been messing about with this in the last week?
No, do you know what? I completely fell off the game that I think you might be talking about. I just really struggled to build up any momentum with it. Every time I'd start it, I'd play it for like half an hour and think, I don't have anything against this, but I'm getting bored. I like what I'm seeing, and I think I like what I'm doing, but I'm bored. And so I stopped. I rolled credits on a bunch of games. I started and finished Under the Waves, which you talked about on this podcast before. Went back and rolled credits on 2 games that I had left unfinished, Robocop, Rogue City, and Rise of the Ronin. Finished both of those. So just clearing stuff off my backlog a little bit at the moment, but yeah, getting there.
Nice. I did indeed play some Plucky Squire. I not only played it, I rolled credits on Plucky Squire as well. So I finished that.
There we go. Nice. Thoughts?
I don't want to. My immediate reaction is to be like, loved it, which I did.
Okay.
That is accurate. But I will. So that game. Hold on. Let me just check how long. It's safe to say it took me to complete, so I don't sound stupid. No, I'm joking.
Okay.
No, I don't. So it took me a pretty standard. It took me about 9.5 hours to roll credits on it, which apparently it's like 8 to 10 hours is about right. And
okay,
I'm a little bit of a completionist for trying to like find everything and do everything. So I was maybe took a little bit longer than I needed to. But I found so much of what that game was putting down engaging and just downright cool and fun. But what was kind of odd was they got a point where it did get a little long in the tooth. I had a session last night where I effectively put a fork in it, but it was probably and I was, when you get to that point in a game where you're like, I'm about to finish this, so I don't want to stop because I'm in the final sprint, and I don't want to
100% know that feeling. Yeah,
exactly. So and I was like, I'm in the final sprint. I'm just going to hammer this until I'm done. Thinking that final sprint was going to be an hour, and it was 3.
Jeez,
or maybe 2.5. It was like 2.5 hours, but it ended up being like it should have been 1. Like it didn't need to be 2.5.
It was drawn out.
It was drawn out, and some of the they did a really nice job of introducing the different game mechanics that you were going to use and how those game mechanics affected the gameplay was very cool. On reflection, there was probably too much focus on like effectively pointless combat. And the combat was not the strongest thing. The manipulation of like the book and how you were going to traverse that world was and the wordplay of the puzzles and things was easily the standout thing for me in that game. Some of the combat and things you do outside of the book were really fun and like inspired. Really like so. For example, there's a section where you have to go and collect these 3 elements that are scattered around the world, and you at one point get into a mug, which is like an illustrated mug, and you can get in the mug and you get like a little backpack who's a rocket, and then he's a jetpack, so then you can sort of jetpack around the world. There's another section where you get into another drawing, and you then are you have like a I don't know if you have him on it, but basically you have a visor and a I guess like a plasma rifle or something like that. And so they do a nice job of like switching up these different elements and introducing them. But what was kind of weird was they're introduced, you use them a couple of times, and that was fine. They were fun, but then you get to a certain point in the game where they feel like they have to trot out all of the mechanics again.
Right.
Which I was like
a one last hurrah for each of the things they'd already introduced.
Exactly. Which actually I found a little labouring. I was like, okay, we're really going to do this. We're going to go through each of your mechanics. And there's a whole bit which was like an hour long at the end of the game, maybe 45 minutes, where they'd introduced this quite fun little rhythm mechanic where you control a character and you've got to move to in time and you know, not trip yourself up by these guards seeing you. And then they just did it, like they were just like, yeah, we're going to do this like 3 or 4 times, and
right,
and you're like, okay. I think with smaller, and I admit maybe I'm completely off base with this, I think with some smaller developers, the development of games is so time consuming, and there's so much effort you have to put into everything. I'd imagine there is something that says to you, we need to make the most out of everything we put time and effort into, and we've already built it, so we can use that again. I totally get that, but that I kind of think you get to a point where you're like, it doesn't mean you have to do it, especially when your game is 10 hours and it probably should have been 7.
Right, yeah. Especially because, again, without sounding too harsh, some of the ones that I've already come across aren't even all that fun. Like, I think one of the first ones in the game, so it's probably the safest to talk about, is when you get a bow. And so for a couple of encounters afterwards, you're essentially put in this situation where you're moving a crosshair basically around the screen, and you're firing this bow at enemies before they come towards you, and you can hold down the button a little bit to charge up the bow, and slightly more powerful shots are needed to hit and kill certain slightly more powerful enemies in one hit. And even that, I was like, this isn't good enough. Like this,
No.
This doesn't feel great.
I'm completely with you.
I'm glad it went away when it did. I think you do it twice. Both individual instances last too long in their own right, and then I was like, thank God that's over. Yeah,
no, I'm completely with you. Like that bow section, the getting the bow, I thought was cool, and they have a nice little like a side mission thing where you have to get it. That was all fine, but yeah, you're right. The actually using it was lame as hell, and I didn't feel good. Didn't feel like something you then like. Yeah, I got the bow. Like it felt horrible and clunky and old school and not enjoyable. You'll be happy to know that doesn't make a comeback.
Okay, good. But then I'm not happy to say that. I'm also just finding some of the fundamentals of the way that game is designed like a little bit tiresome. Right. And now, like, even things as simple as moving in and out of the book world and the real world to turn the pages and go and find words from previous pages to solve these kind of like word-based puzzles. Some of that's a little bit like, I get to like a thing that I can tell is a word section because, you know, you have these sentences that are written on the maps and you can almost walk over them and they'll have a green glow around them, which basically says, if you whack me with your sword, then you can pick me up and replace me with another word. Every time that happens, I'm like, how many pages am I going to flip one by one until I find the word crumbled from like 3 hours ago that gets me through this puzzle?
I think that's a little unfair. I think, but I don't think by the end of the game there were no, that stuff for me wasn't overdone. You're not wrong. There's a couple of early bits where it's almost like they do it to kind of emphasize the point that you can go back, get a word, bring it out, but that actually doesn't. They don't reuse that a lot. They much more go for the word you need is effectively in book, so you can just walk through a door, get it. You might need to come out of the book to do something else to do with the world, like change the world inside the book. But you don't actually need to, like, you end up getting these stamps that can influence the world.
Yeah, the stop stamp I've got.
Yeah, oh, exactly. So those things do stick around, but I think they did a really good job of using each mechanic and not having it outstay its welcome. I think for me, it was just that last push that there was a little bit of laboured, almost like we're teasing you. There was a weird bit where I don't want to give anything away because it's right at the end, but it was like a drawn out final sort of bit, and I think they were really trying to be like, you love this, you really like this, you like this mechanic, that's why you're playing this game, you like how this game presents itself, so have more. And I was like, you're just making me do busy work so that I can revel in how cool your idea was. But I already agree if your game's cool, I've played it for 8 hours, I don't need you to spend the next 4 pages or whole chapter of the book as they frame it to just let me like enjoy how cool it is. I'm like, I've been playing the whole game, I'm with you. And but by the end of it, I really enjoyed it. I'm super happy I rolled credits. I think what they did was really cool. I love all the little interjections of sort of silliness, like when Jot gets ripped and rips his shirt sleeves off, and he's like got his guns out. Silly stuff like that. I think is quite fun.
That's all right. Yeah. And
some of the fourth wall breaking is cute. Like they do a weird fourth wall break within a fourth wall break, which is nice. Okay. Very much recommend it to people if they haven't played it already. And it's if you've got PlayStation, it's free on the PlayStation Store. It's free on PlayStation Plus if you remember. But yeah, I think you even mentioned last week that there's a definite possibility that game could outstay its welcome. I think it did a little, and they could have tightened it up a touch.
Yeah. I mean, I think it has done, and I'm not even at the sort of the point that you're talking about, this sort of like prolonged finale. So I'm slightly worried for my prospects of finishing that game.
Maybe I'm over egging it, but I'd be really interested if you do roll credits on it. I know you will at some point. I will be interested to get your take and see if you thought, oh no, actually I thought it was fine, or whether you'll be like, because some of it, the narrative part, I was like, oh, that's very cool. I really like what they've done. But then when I realised, do you ever get in a game and you're like, now you realise what you've got to do because of the narrative that's happened, and you're just like, oh, I don't know if I can be bothered. Like, for example...
I know what I need to do, I just need to do it quandary.
So in the sense of, for example, a game like The Last of Us, it happens in part 1 and part 2, where, for example, you've got to go from here to there, and the game's great, you're loving the game, but you've got to cross through like this hotel, and you've got to make it out this window, and it's a really easy little jaunt, and then Ellie falls through the floor, and you now realise you have to climb all your way back up to the top of a building, fighting enemies left, right, and centre, when a minute ago it was a 30-second walk, and you're like, do you know what I mean? You're like, oh, okay.
Yes.
I was looking forward to a 30-second walk to a window to climb through, and now I've got to do a 2-hour climb up a hotel, take out zombies, take out a big bursting thing, and you're just like, I don't know if I can be arsed.
Yeah, I do know that feeling.
Yeah, it has a bit of that.
Okay.
There we go. Anyway.
I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure.
But
I feel bad saying bad things about the Plucky Squire because I don't know, it's got such a nice it's got such a charm to it. But yeah,
I will say,
I'm not told.
I was looking forward to it for a very long time. Not very long, a decent amount of time, and I feel it met all of my expectations. And I was very happy with that.
Good.
I was happy with that. Anyway, let's move on back to the state of play from PlayStation. So we last thing we talked about was Palworld. Next up, we got to see the Luna Remastered Collection, which is going to allow you to experience Luna Silver Star, the complete story, and Luna 2 Eternal Blue. These names are horrible. Which were both originally released.
Yeah, I saw you were trying to avoid the word complete, but that is officially part of the title.
I missed a word out. Luna Silver Star Story Complete and Luna 2 Eternal Blue Complete. Horrible names. Which there was a bit of a theme, Jamie, with PlayStation. They decided they were going to go back to PlayStation 1 and revive some old stuff.
Yeah, some of which didn't need reviving, but I cannot say whether or not that's the case when it comes to any of the Luna games, because I will be honest, these popped up, I looked at the art style, said, okay, this could be one of like 3 or 4 JRPGs that I never played because, I wasn't really doing much gaming at the time, and it's not a genre that I've gone back to an awful lot over the years, and it ended up being one that I've never heard of before. I will be totally honest. The Luna series is completely new to me, and so that means it didn't really kind of like push my buttons in that sense. But I'm sure, as is always the case with these kinds of remasters and re-releases and collections, there will be some subsection of people out there that are incredibly happy. The Luna heads. The Luna Loonies, we call them.
The Luna Loonies. I'll also, at this point, just because I might as well, I'll say, so they're also, the other thing that they also said they're remastering is Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 are getting remastered as well. There was, was there not something else? I'm sure I saw a couple of other things. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. I think that was it. I think
are you thinking about the fact that Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, and Dino Crisis are joining the PlayStation Plus Classics catalog?
I think maybe. I think that's exactly what I was thinking of. I think indeed that.
See, Legacy of Kain is something I could be a little bit more down with. I did play Soul Reaver 2 at the time, when I was still a young buck and made a lot of my video game purchasing decisions based on how cool the box art was, and perhaps by extension, how cool the protagonist looked in the box art. And Soul Reaver 2, I should say, performed very well in both of those tests. But I struggled with it as a kid. I think I was probably 7 or 8.
Right.
And I didn't really know what I was getting myself in for. And I remember kind of liking it, but I don't think it's one of those games where I reckon if I and I occasionally do this. I don't know if anyone else out there does this when they have kind of like some memories of a game, but not good memories of a game, like not clear memories of a game. I'll find like a YouTube playthrough, like a full playthrough in one complete video, and I'll watch it up until the point where I don't recognize it anymore, and I'll be like, that's how much of that game I played. And I wouldn't be surprised if I did that with Soul Reaver 2. It's like, I played the first 4 hours of that game, and then that was it.
I know exactly what you mean. I downloaded I played a game recently that was a game I had in my youth, and I was like, I did exactly the same thing. I watched a Let's Play, and I was like, oh, I only ever played the first hour of this game.
Exactly, yeah. And you probably played that first hour 17 times, and you've got no idea why.
I have very fond memories of that game, like of playing it a lot, and then I'm like,
what's the game?
It was Judge Dredd on the SNES.
Ah, okay, yeah. Interesting.
So, and
yeah. So it goes.
But then it's one of the. I mean, games were made differently back then, right? The whole point was that you play, you die, you start again. You play, you die, you start again, and there was no memory cards or anything. So you'd get to a point where you could, if you got the code to get you to the next level,
right.
Then so you were constantly trying to reach the next level, and if you didn't make it, you'd have to play the whole level again.
I mean, in your case, yes. I'm talking about a PS2 game, which gives me less of a foot to stand on in that regard. But
right.
Yeah.
Yes,
because I did have memory cards, and the objective of Soul Reaver 2 wasn't to die over and over again.
It's funny, like memory cards. They don't even seem that new, to be honest, but they really are. They really are. They've really been around for a long time. I mean,
but they've also been gone for a long time. Weirdly enough.
Oh, don't say that. They have.
Well, they have.
They have been. That's very true. We were getting 2 updates for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. We have got Radical Reptiles DLC, which will add 2 new creatures, and a free, they emphasize many times, a free remix of the soundtrack, which is being released alongside the DLC. A cool game. We played a bit of that, didn't we, with Steph? Shredder's Revenge.
Yeah. I think it was on Game Pass at the time or something like that. So maybe that's why we dipped in. And yeah, it was a solid, arcade style side-scrolling brawler.
What is one thing that I would confuse me, because I was like, I don't remember this even coming out. Sonic X Shadow Generations.
Yeah,
that's already out?
No, you're not going crazy. That game is not out.
Oh, okay.
So that's an unreleased game where that they announced DLC for that is coming out after the game is released.
Because I thought
in time for a particular movie.
Yes, I was like, I've seen this before, but they're now talking about movie pack DLC, and I was like, oh, damn, does that mean that I've missed that game coming out entirely? But no, I'm glad that you've clarified that for me. Which has come.
Game is out on the 22nd of October. Sorry to interrupt.
And then the movie pack which features Keanu Reeves doing the voice for, and some of the scenes that you might have noticed if you've seen the Sonic 3 trailer, with Shadow busting some of his fighting skills on Sonic, Knuckles, and who's the other one?
Tails. Tails per hour.
Thank you very much. You might have recognised some of the locations that they were fighting in, and that is coming out on December the 12th.
Right.
So when does that film come out then?
I was going to say, I think the movie's a week after that. So I don't know if it's exactly the 19th, but that's roughly the cadence.
Do you know what I've been getting all year? So when Sonic 3 out? When Sonic 3 out? When Sonic 3 out? When Sonic 3 out? I'm like, I don't know. But now, yeah, there you go. I'll tell them.
The end is in sight, Jonesy.
That we can add that to the roster because we still watch Sonic 1 and 2 regularly.
Oh God.
We can add Sonic 3.
I don't know how you do it.
Do you know what I've done? I had two options: love it or hate it. I'm now firmly in love with both of those films.
You just had to embrace it. Yeah, no, I respect that.
Yeah, it's the only thing to do. If I hate them, it's worse. It's much worse. We then, after Sonic, we got a look at Fantasian Neo Dimension, which will be released on Thursday, December the 5th for PlayStation 4 and 5. I don't remember what that was at all. So unless you want to mention anything about it, I'm going to move swiftly on.
That is the port of of Fantasian Neo Dimension. The selling point, like the big kind of like the elevator pitch, is it's the new RPG from Hironobu Sakaguchi, who is the father of Final Fantasy. He's the Final Fantasy guy.
Of course.
But yeah, I want to say it was an Apple Arcade exclusive, and now this is its console port. I think it looks a bit weird. I'll be honest, I'm not totally in love with either the backgrounds of the game or the UI of the game. Occasionally it was like, oh, it's quite striking looking, but overall, like I just found myself to be a bit mixed on its presentation. Not to mention the fact that I've been an Apple Arcade subscriber for years now, and I've still never played this game. So, not a Fantasian guy. What are we going to call them? Fantasian fiends?
Fantasian fiends. Fantasian friends. Fantasians.
Fantasians. Fantasian fans.
Fantasian fans.
Fantasians.
That just sounds weird.
Yeah, it does.
Next up, the test BioWare doesn't want, Dragon Age: The Veilguard, which is being released Thursday, 31st of October. Not too long to wait at all for that. Almost exactly a month. Well, not quite almost exactly a month. A couple of days it'll be exactly a month. Yeah. This was an extended trailer though. We got to see a fight with a massive ice talon dragon. I wanna like Dragon Age, the Veilguard, because the Dragon Age games look cool, but I've never really been into them, to be honest. But it did look good.
I think it looks solid, and the recent round of previews all seemed pretty positive. A lot of sort of journalists and outlets going into those previews saying, I was skeptical, but now I'm on board. There is also an element of, I don't think it's quite make or break for BioWare, but it's getting pretty damn close now, in that you can't release 3 massive, expensive, high-profile flops back to back to back, and well, presumably you can't get away with that in this day and age. Which isn't to say I think BioWare would go anywhere if something bad happened with the Veilguard. I just think they're probably taking a little bit more time and care with this than maybe they could afford to do previously, and hopefully that shows in the finished product. Because I know deep down that a good BioWare RPG is absolutely right up my street. The problem is, I've just never hit it off with Dragon Age, much like you.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I never played Origins, but I did play 2 and I did play Inquisition, and I bounced off them both pretty hard and pretty early on. And meanwhile, I've played all the Mass Effect games, bar Andromeda, multiple times to completion. So I don't really know what the disconnect is there. I'm not necessarily a bigger sci-fi fan than I am a fantasy fan. I've got equal amounts of room for each in my heart. So yeah, I hope the Veilguard is what lands. I think it looks quite pretty as well.
Yeah, no,
I don't mind the art style they've gone for.
No, me either. I think it looks decent. It's like you said, it's something that looks fine, looks good, but it's just something that I've never really been that into. But maybe I haven't given enough chance. But hey, I hope that people that like Dragon Age games do. And for BioWare's sake, I hope that it does well.
Yeah.
Next up, we had Alan Wake 2 DLC, The Lake House, that will be coming out in October. Very Control. This one.
Yes.
This is looking very, very Control. We got to see a Federal Bureau of Control facility called The Lake House. And the voiceover was a little bit... Is it Jesse McFadden? Jesse Faden?
I couldn't tell if that was Jesse or Saga.
No, I mean, it just sounded... I don't think it was her, but it just sounded very similar. I don't know which one it would be, if either. It might be someone totally different.
I don't know. It could be either. I mean, Jesse did also appear in one of the 3 episodes in the previously released Night Springs DLC, so there is a precedent for her being a playable character in Alan Wake 2 DLC. Although I think it feels like it would make more sense for this to be, about Saga and be a little bit more of a sort of like a through line from Alan Wake 2's story, where in for as much as that is kind of possible, given some of the weird shenanigans that go on in that game. But yeah, I'm really excited for this. I own that digital deluxe edition, so I'll be. Well, sweet. I was about to say I will be playing this day one, but there is an asterisk that I have to put next to that that ties into not a rant, but just
go on.
I don't know.
Rant away.
I don't know if now's the right time because we're in the middle of. But actually, do you know what? Now is about the time that I was thinking this. And look, state of plays must be incredibly hard to organize and to put together, right? Because it's not just about PlayStation, what they want and what they think is the right timing. It's also about the deals that they sign and the agreements they make with other publishers and various third parties. And, there are all kinds of co-marketing deals and promotional deals. And some of them, state of plays are mentioned, if not by name, then, PlayStation end up with responsibilities to feature games either a certain amount of times or to have slots available for these games, because for a lot of third parties, some of the games we've already talked about, some of the games we will talk about, the Veilguard being you look at how long that Veilguard slot was. That's a significant beat in EA's marketing calendar, and so it's something that PlayStation are kind of on the hook for. So you could be charitable and say that the timing of this state of play, that being the first piece of communication we've really had from PlayStation since the PS5 Pro was announced, and a state of play that's taking place 2 days before PS5 Pro pre-orders open up, you could be charitable and say that it's just unfortunate, that it's bad timing, that they needed to get the state of play out the door to fulfill a bunch of marketing agreements, and the fact that it was sandwiched by the PS5 Pro announcement and its pre-orders was regrettable. But I'm not feeling that charitable, and that left me feeling that this state of play up till this point, and even beyond this point, up until basically 5 minutes before the end of this state of play, was extremely tone deaf. From little, and I haven't seen many people even online mention this, but from the little blurb, the little disclaimer at the very beginning of the state of play that said that all the the gameplay and things like that and everything captured in the following state of play was captured on a PS5 or a PS5 dev kit, and I'm thinking, what about the new console you're about to try and sell me for £700? What was filmed on that? What was captured on that rather? And all the way through to the fact that we've got games here. And this is the asterisk next to Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2 is one of them that are going to be PS5 Pro enhanced,
right?
And you're still continuing to sell me content that comes out before that console's out. So I'm watching a trailer for DLC for a PS5 Pro enhanced game that I'm going to play before the PS5 Pro comes out. And you thought they had a problem a couple of weeks ago about how much of the PS5 Pro marketing and reveal and elevator pitch hinged on old games. That problem got worse as the state of play goes on. There's another game that we're going to talk about in 10 minutes that again is like a PS5 Pro enhanced game, and it's coming out 2 weeks before the console, and it itself is a remaster of a 9-year-old game, 8-year-old game. And so at this point, I was losing my mind. I was like, they haven't said the words PS5 Pro. The end slates of these trailers all say coming out on PS5 in this date or that date. Why are they pretending pre-orders for this £700 console don't open up in 36 hours? What the fuck is going on? And they saved themselves a little bit. Spoiler alert, at the end of the show, they saved themselves a little bit. But I'm going to say this now, before we get there. They don't save themselves by much. Mark Cerny doesn't save them. PlayStation doesn't save them. Sucker Punch saved them. Okay, and again, I apologize. That's I tip the hat. The thing that everyone already knows is coming because of the fucking title and the thumbnail. But yeah, I was losing my mind. I was losing my mind, and I was losing my mind.
So would you have rather that the PlayStation 5 Pro release date came before these games, which are going to have the enhanced option available? So for example, what you don't want to do is be sitting on your hands while the Alan 2 Lake House DLC is released, and you are then therefore, as someone with a digital deluxe version, you are incapable of playing the best version of that's going to be available to you unless you wait for the PlayStation 5 Pro to come out.
Essentially, yeah.
And same look, deal with
I know that it's with a game that we haven't discussed yet, but yes, right. And like, look, I know that I'm asking for a lot, like that for release dates to shift around in time with consoles. Although in one of the two cases that I'm mentioning, it's literally the same company. You control when that game comes out. And it's a game that no one fucking wants anyway. Doesn't matter if you delay it by 2 weeks. But I think it's because, let's say, Jonesy, hypothetically, and this is imagine, if you will, close your eyes, a pure hypothetical, for the second time in 2 weeks, we got a montage of games that were enhanced on the PlayStation 5 Pro. And let's say this montage was filled with the likes of The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima and Gran Turismo 7 and Hogwarts Legacy and Alan Wake 2 and so on and so forth. Games that, with the exception of one, Assassin's Creed Shadows, which, hey, more news on that later, brace yourself, are all already out. I'm sitting there thinking the biggest problem you've had marketing this console is you're showing me how good games are. You're showing me how good these games are, and I am not going to play any of them again. I'd love to, but I'm not going to play any of them again. I'm not going to start a new game on Horizon Forbidden West. I'm not going to start a new game on The Last of Us Part 2 because it runs at 4K 60 now. I'm just not. And since you've done that, since you announced that console, and since you had that marketing faux pas, you've now run a stream that has added 2 more games to that list that will once again be old by the time I buy your new console. That I won't want to play again by the time I buy your new console.
When all we've said all along is give us something to play, give us something to look forward to play on the PlayStation 5 Pro, there is now
5 minutes of not even doing that.
Yeah, fair, which is absolutely fair. Yeah, I completely
and
agree.
I apologize to anyone that doesn't like me or it when I kind of get in one of these moods, but like, that's not even the last time I'm gonna get into one of these states.
That's what I like to hear. It brings in the views, keeps smiles on people's faces.
I don't know if it does. I think people just switched off, actually.
Let's rattle through a few more until we get to the ones that the big ones. Then until we can what's the saying? I don't even know. I was gonna say tick a few more of Jamie's boxes, but that's not what I want to say.
Flick boxes at this point in the night.
Flick a few more of Jamie's switches, maybe.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe. Fear the Spotlight.
Not the Switch, that's the console.
Fear the Spotlight from Blumhouse Games is coming back, so you'll be able to play that on October 22nd. We got a check-in on Tales of Agazba. Is that how you say that? Tales of
I would say Agazba.
Agazba. Multiplayer open world builder game that went into early access in November. Will go into early access. Hold on, the way you've written this is weird. Jamie wrote this, by the way, so it goes into early access in November, or it went into early access last November?
I will read it the exact way it is written, so people at home can determine if I've written it weird. A multiplayer open world builder game that will enter early access this November. That is what I wrote, folks.
I misread it like twice. Sorry. It goes into early access in November. Tales of...
Sorry.
This looked interesting. Do you know what's funny? Before I'd even watched the State of Play, because I didn't watch it live, I saw on X that someone had put up the trailer for Tales of Agazba. I can't say it. Agazba. Anyway, where it's this game where it's a very pretty game. There's a lot of like maybe something like even Horizon Zero Dawn levels of underwater, like nice saturated plants and a lush world and all of that sort of stuff. But it also made me think of that weird game that we had last year where you could inhabit the bodies of different creatures and you were running around. I think it was a PlayStation game. I can't remember.
That released last year.
Yeah, I believe so. And what was it called? I can't.
Oh god, this.
I can't remember.
No, no, it does matter. This is going to annoy me now. I need more clues.
It's called. It's got a weird name. Like it's like
Tchia.
Yes, Tchia.
Yeah.
It looked like it would have that kind of feel about it, but it was effectively you're rebuilding this world that's been destroyed by things that have come before. And it looked very pretty, but again, I wasn't quite exactly sure what that game was. So I would like to see more of that, actually, because it looked like it could be interesting.
There's a longer trailer from the showcase last summer, but it is interesting. I thought the same things both times, which is this looks really big and, like you said, really lush and really open, and at the same time looks really expensive. And at the same time, I'm not going to say it was necessarily swept under the rug at this state of play, but this was during the section of the stream where, you know, a woman had come out and was basically saying what we were seeing and it was accompanied by like 20 seconds of footage. And you're a bit like, hang on a second, like that looks a bit more intriguing and a bit bigger than just here's this builder game that's going into early access. You know, it has something about it, and like you said, a very unique art style, and for, you know, I don't want to sort of like throw any shade at the endless number of, you know, farming or builder games that are announced every single time there's a Nintendo Direct, but it's nice to have something that visually is a big change of pace from a lot of what's going on elsewhere in that genre.
Yes, no, I agree. Which is I saw it and I was like, that looks interesting. And like you said, it was kind of skipped over very quickly. But anyway, yeah, maybe just check out more of that. Lego Fortnite is getting a split screen multiplayer in October, so you'll be able to play that on your brand new Fortnite DualSense controller, which you'll also be able to pick up. If that's your jam, if you like controllers that are based on
If you ever wanted a controller that says "where we drop in" on it in graffiti style writing, then now's the time.
Millions will, I'm sure. We then got a look at Dynasty Warriors Origins, which is arriving Friday 17th of Jan 2025. I think we talked about this before. Dynasty Warriors is a series that I have not played for a very long time. Used to absolutely love, and this does look very cool. Like that, they do battle scale, like the scale of battle, better than any sort of developers I've seen, and
yeah,
I think there's a lot of potential for this. So I'll be keeping an eye, definitely on Dynasty Warriors Origins. Monster Hunter Wilds is another one that Jamie, I keep seeing it and being intrigued and thinking I might have time for a Monster Hunter game eventually.
I've got a feeling that this might be anyone that was left over and wasn't quite won over by Monster Hunter World. You know, this could be the thing that swoops in and kind of picks up the pieces and becomes, well, I mean, Monster Hunter is already a major IP for Capcom. But like this could really, again, this could bring it to a whole new audience if it continues to deliver in the way many of the trailers have implied.
Comes at quite a nice time as well. It's going to be 28th of Feb next year. There's not any other big games that are dropping then.
No. In fact, I know that you're joking about like this other game that is coming out in February of 2025, but I want to also say, inside the last week, Sega announced the new Like a Dragon game, and it's like a pirate themed one this time. And that is coming out on the exact same day as Monster Hunter Wilds, if I'm not mistaken, 28th of February.
There you go. We also got a little bit more of a look at Lego Horizon Zero Dawn, which is it's not like my most anticipated like Sony first party game. I just think it looks wicked. I love that. I love that mashup Lego and Horizon. We got to see some fun costumes that they were definitely shilling for on the digital deluxe version, because you can also get a roller coaster in World if you sort of pay a bit more for that game. You do get some fancy outfits as well, as I said, like Sackboy and Ratchet and Wolverine as well.
Wolverine?
I believe I saw Wolverine in there.
I think that was Wait, who? Wolverine?
Was that supposed to be Ratchet? I thought it was Wolverine.
I think that might have been Ratchet.
I used it in our thumbnail.
With yellowish ears. Let me look at our thumbnail.
Look at our thumbnail, because I thought that was... I saw that and thought it was Wolverine. Is that supposed to be Ratchet? All right. I saw Rivet and I thought they'd done Rivet, and I didn't. And I thought that was Wolverine. It's because of the ears.
You saw this with yellow person with big yellow ears who's wearing like a weird brown leather like cap thing was Wolverine.
Yeah. Have you not seen Wolverine?
Wolverine's a man.
But he wears a big yellow suit with like yellow ears.
What?
What do you mean? What?
Like, yes, there are versions of like the X-Men outfit that has yellow elements, but he doesn't have big yellow ears and a brown leather like thingy-mabobby.
Not, or he has like not ears. Then I don't know what you call it. He's got a yellow head, and then he's got those whatever those things are that come off the black things that come off the side of his head like big ears. And he's 90% yellow.
You're looking at Wolverine now, yeah?
Yeah.
Now look back at your thumbnail and ask yourself if that is Lego Wolverine.
Hold on, I'm gonna have to find it. I'm gonna have to crash our entire thing.
If it crashes, it's my fault.
All right, on reflection, the brown splodges on the ears give it away. There's not. I thought it was Wolverine when I first glimpsed it, and then I used it for a thumbnail and still thought it was Wolverine. So.
The irony there is that Insomniac, developers of both Ratchet and Clank and
the
forthcoming Wolverine game, so good news for them. They can just swap in the Ratchet model for Wolverine, and no one will notice. When a Lombax with giant yellow ears and a wrench starts fighting people in a bar, everyone's going to be like, "That's Wolverine."
I'm getting shade now from John in chat saying sideburns.
Rightly so.
And Wolverine's hair is highly gelled. No, it's you people are thinking of like Hugh Jackman Wolverine from the movies, the animated cartoon and the comic book Wolverine. When he's in his outfit, he's yellow like head to toe, and he has black like wing things like ears coming off the side. You can't see his sideburns. They're all covered up.
Yeah, but like again, it just doesn't look.
It looks like the thumb.
Ratchet.
The thumb doesn't.
Okay. So like you mentioned big black things that start from his eyes and go over his eyes and go pointed outwards.
All right.
Why
it doesn't have
why are Ratchet's yellow, and also why is Ratchet's face yellow when no matter what Wolverine is wearing, all the parts of him that are visible, he's a human
because he's
got
Lego
white skin.
Legos are yellow.
Lego skin
is
right there.
Lego skin is yellow.
It's not.
I don't know. It is Lego people are yellow.
It is in some cases, but not in Lego Horizon. Lego Horizon Adventures. Well, Aloy's just white. She's got white skin.
Nah, she's yellow as well.
No, she's not.
No, I know I'm lying now. I'm just reaching because I can't. I've got no other defenses, so now I'm having to lie.
Wow. For shame, Jonesy.
For shame.
Wolverine. That's tickled.
I didn't look at it that long, all right? I thought it was. It made sense to me.
You
it was like they're doing Wolverine
with it.
Yeah, I saw. I saw different people. I saw Sackboy. I saw Rivet, and then I was like, I didn't. Well, my brain just went, oh, and there's Wolverine. I don't know. That's what happened. All I can be is honest.
You know what? Brains have lapses sometimes. Especially when you're 40.
We also have a release. I'm not 40. You are outrageous. Jamie's been bullying me all along before the show, telling me I'm old and going to fall apart. Anyway, we got a release date, which I'm really happy about because it's quite soon. It's Thursday, the 14th of November, when you can dress up as
too long. Not
Wolverine.
I can't wait. Not too long to wait.
No.
And you know what? I will just also say, like, I like the look of Lego Horizon Adventures. Like, I know there have been a lot of Lego games in the past, but it's almost like they've taken a slightly different approach to this one, where they're kind of taking almost like the real world properties of Lego in like the way it reacts to light and the way it reflects things, and it gives it a really nice like sheen. I just think visually is quite appealing. So I really hope this is good and fun.
No, me too. Like I said, it's not like I'm not going to say it's like my most anticipated like first party PlayStation thing, but it's definitely up there. Like, I think it could be really piss off. Was it my antivirus is trying to make me restart my computer? I thought I uninstalled it. Go away. Sorry, we digress. But let's keep it, Horizon, because we also found out that Zero Dawn is getting a remaster for the PlayStation 5. It's being developed by Nixxes, and it's got re-recorded conversations. It's got new mocap and other tweaks as well. It will cost you $10 extra on top of the original if you already own the original. And that is coming out on Thursday, October the 31st for PC and PlayStation 5. This is one of the games Jamie is not going to play on the PlayStation 5 Pro because it's coming out too early.
Yeah,
and just you're not going to play it. That's the real reason. Isn't
it? I might. I will say. In totally unsurprising news, because obviously Forbidden West was a gorgeous game and remains a gorgeous game. Over a year on, that this I think looks absolutely fantastic. Like, I went and watched the full longer trailer on the PlayStation channel, and I am tempted to check it out. And the $10 upgrade path does make it a little bit more likely that I do so. I just think that it's such an odd choice for a game to remaster. Like, whether you focus on the fact that it's not that old, whether you focus on the fact that it plays relatively well on the PS5 anyway. I get that when you look at other franchises in PlayStation Studios portfolio, like The Last of Us, there is a precedent for this. Like, they are trying to kind of keep older entries in certain franchises up to date and relevant, especially because they talked about this with Ghost, but they're trying to do a lot of kind of cross-media stuff. They want TV shows and movies based on these properties in the future, and they want it so that when new fans come along, they're not playing an 8-year-old PS4 game and then a newer PS5 game afterwards. They get kind of a new up-to-date experience when they're onboarded to these franchises. I get that. I just think that the optics of it are weird. And I know that the optics of it aren't simple. And if rumors are to be believed, that this will happen again in the near future when supposedly a Days Gone remastered is announced. Once again, a game that actually got an update for a PS5 patch, as it were, to allow it to run at 60 frames a second. I think the optics are weird. There's so many things that go untouched, in the PlayStation back catalogue. When you go back through the PS2 and PS3 especially, and I know that it's difficult, but it just invites a little bit more pressure and a little bit more scrutiny on a PlayStation brand that already has a lot of people looking at it kind of with a raised eyebrow, saying,
right,
like, who is this for? And granted, like, one thing I will say, and I know this is slightly contradictory given the argument I just made, that when it comes to remasters and remakes, you can't play fantasy football with it, right? You can't go back through your favorite PS3 games and say, well, why aren't they doing this? Well, why aren't they doing that? Well, why not Bloodborne? Because in a lot of cases, the answers to that are incredibly complicated, and the process of getting those games, up to speed are incredibly complicated. Nixxes, for what it's worth, appear to be an incredibly capable team, and also appear to work incredibly quickly. I looked this up. This will be the third title that Nixxes will have released this year, because they also did the Ghost of Tsushima PC port that released this year and the Horizon Forbidden West PC port that released this year. Their last headcount was from 2022, where they only had 55 employees. It might have gone up a lot in the last 2 and a bit years, but they're not a big studio, and they appear to work very quickly. And they've worked extensively with Guerrilla and on the Horizon games before, which means they're very familiar with the Decima engine. It was, I don't know how long this was in development for, probably a fair while, but it was probably one of those cases where they said, this is the time we've got, this is the size of team we can partition. If we don't give them something to do, they're going to do nothing. What can this team do and do to a high enough standard in this amount of time that when it's all said and done and we put that out on the market, we come out in the black? And there probably just aren't many titles that you can put into that equation and end up with something that makes financial sense. And I can guarantee you, Bloodborne isn't one of those titles. And while we feel like Horizon Zero Dawn and Days Gone shouldn't be, I can absolutely see why they kind of are, depending on the volume of work that's required to be done. It's the exact same thing we talked about with Naughty Dog, where people talked about, why Naughty Dog remaking Last of Us Part 1 and then remastering Last of Us Part 2? When is Naughty Dog going to make a new game? It's like, Naughty Dog have been making a new game, maybe even multiple new games the whole time. That's the problem. When you're all hands on deck for The Last of Us Part 2 and that releases in the summer of 2020, then all of a sudden you've got, at Naughty Dog specifically, let's say, 500 people wanting something to move on to. And Neil Druckmann says, right, I'm going to take my narrative team, we're going to lock ourselves away for 6 months, and then we'll come back and tell you what you're working on. Someone, whether it's, someone at PlayStation looks at that and says, hang on a second, are you telling me that 350 to 400 of our most talented developers are sat around waiting for like the narrative team to... And look, I don't know if that's how long it took. I don't know how many projects were in incubation at Naughty Dog and how quickly they could get up to speed. But one thing's for sure, you can't get to a point where 0 people are working on a game to 500 people working on a game overnight. You can't even do that quickly, because even if it's not narrative, it's art and it's blah, 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 blah. And there's entire departments that are sat around waiting for something to do. And that's where games like The Last of Us Part 1 and The Last of Us 2 Part 2 Remastered came from. And that, to a certain extent, is probably where like Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered comes from. So I'm in two minds where I totally see how PlayStation end up in these situations. I just don't know who it's for. And I will also echo the sentiment that I shared earlier. Like, this is a good-looking title. They've confirmed it's going to be PS5 Pro enhanced. And they're releasing it on October 31st. Like, yeah. Maybe they did it on purpose. Maybe someone was said, "Oh, let's release it in November on the same day as the PS5 Pro," and then someone else was like, "Yeah, but then the narrative will be the only PS5 Pro launch game is a remaster of an old PS4 game," and they were like, "Oh, you're right." So, because like, without being weird about this, I've worked in video game marketing, and like anything that you. Like, if it sounds if a conversation sounds believable in the sense that it's a conversation that might have happened, it probably did happen. These concerns probably were brought up. They probably were considered, and weird shit probably did happen.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm just as you can tell, I'm a bit all over the place with it.
But look, I think everything you've said is completely justifiable. But right now, we need to move on to the big thing, the real thing that everyone was really waiting for as part of any PlayStation State of Play. That is, of course, the Stellar Blade photo mode, which is coming soon. We don't know when, but it's coming soon. That is what everyone's really waiting for, because you want to be able to see Eve's ass and take pictures of it.
Oh, yeah. What's the point if you can't take pictures of Eve's ass? And indeed, 2B from... 2B from Nier Automata.
Yes.
Again,
there's DLC collab.
Yeah. Because if there's one thing... Yeah, because the problem is, Eve, as pleasing as on the eyes it is for her to wear a skin-tight jumpsuit, it means you can't get any upskirt photos when the photo mode comes out. So that's why we needed the Nier Automata crossover, for the upskirt potential.
Just for that one reason. Imagine if they put that in their marketing materials. They're like, we needed a character with a skirt so that we could... wow, that would be an interesting news cycle.
I mean, Japan was the country where wasn't there a thing at one point where they made it so that the shutter noise on phone cameras
shut it off,
couldn't be silenced?
Yes,
because there was a problem with people taking upskirt photos on public transport.
That you make a damn good point.
Now, Stellar Blade not developed in Japan, I will clarify, but Nier Automata certainly was.
We then had some PlayStation Plus info. So we're looking at games that are coming out coming to PlayStation Plus in October. If you are signed up to that, we're going to get Dead Space, WWE 2K24, and Doke Doke Literature Club Plus. So any of those sound good to you, you can get them in October. I, for one, have not played the Dead Space remake, so I will be definitely getting my hands on that, playing that.
It's damn good. And scary.
Yeah, that's the only thing. I'm gonna have to get someone to play it with me. I won't be able to play it on my own. I'll be like, there's necro things coming out. I mean, events.
By the sounds of things, according to earlier, it sounds like your wife is probably the person to call.
Oh,
She could take the control out of your hands if needs be.
she could. She will be the person to call it. Well, the kids would freak out more than I would, so that's not going to happen. It would have to be the wife. We also found out that Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, and Dino Crisis will be added to the PS Plus Classics catalogue later this year, and The Last of Us Part 1 will be joining the PS Plus game catalogue later this week on the 26th of September. That is, I do maintain that the PlayStation Plus membership and all the games you get associated with it, whether they be classics, whether they be PS5 titles themselves, it is a very enticing prospect. If you were thinking of getting a PlayStation 5, a PlayStation 5 Pro, any of the above, you could live and eat well, I think, off of a PlayStation Plus membership. Especially at the higher levels, the higher tier levels, you can get access to so many games now. If you're not that bothered about new games coming out, which needs to happen because of how bloody expensive games are these days.
That is true. It definitely can be a very rewarding service, but I think the problem I have is that a lot of the time it ends up rewarding patience, which is something I have startlingly little of. So as someone that owns Dead Space and WWE 2K24 and The Last of Us Part 1, I look at this, I'm like, well, I'm happy for folks.
Yes, me too. I'm happy for folks too. We then had... We're nearly at the end of the entire show now, but there was a couple more things to mention. Andy Dick popped up to remind us that the PlayStation 5 Pro was Mark Cerny. Sorry,
This is Jonesy's new bit. Is that Andy Dick looks like Mark Cerny
and sounds like he does. All right, that's no shade to Andy Dick or Mark Cerny. They are twins practically.
You're allowed to throw shade at Andy Dick. He's a convicted sex offender.
Is he? Oh, now I feel bad that I said Mark Cerny looks insane. Mark Cerny is nothing like Andy Dick.
It is in fact such a important bullet point in the life and times of Andy Dick that it is in the opening sentence of his Wikipedia page.
Oh, right.
Andy Dick is an American actor, comedian, and convicted sex offender.
Imagine
that's one of my favourite things about that Wikipedia does is when someone being a sex offender or something like that is such an important part of their story that it makes it into the first sentence.
It's the heading on the gravestone. Here lies Andy Dick, actor, comedian, sex offender. Great. I take it back. Mark Cerny is nothing like Andy Dick. He doesn't look like him. Doesn't sound like him. So let's forget about that. But he popped up to remind us that in a couple of days you'll be able to pre-order the PlayStation 5 Pro and also to show off some of the games, bits of snippets that will be getting PS5 Pro enhanced versions.
Mm-hmm. This was the point of the show where I was like, okay, thank God they're acknowledging it. I don't know what's going to happen next. It might just be this montage, and then the stream ends. But I'm glad that they acknowledged the elephant in the room that this console is coming out. I thought the montage was stupid. It's getting to the point where I struggle to know what other word to use to describe these process. Like again, when you're wheeling out Mark Cerny in particular, the systems architect, and he's reminding us of the big three, and he's talking about the GPU, and he wants people to remember terms like PlayStation Super Spectral Resolution or whatever PSSR stands for, and like you're hitting us over the head with all these bullet points, and then when it comes to the games themselves, it's like here's 2 to 3 seconds at most of games that where the improvements that you're making are totally imperceptible. Like, I think it is startling, again, that we are very, very close, within, I don't actually know the specifics, but I presume within 24 hours of PS5 Pro pre-orders opening, and the most effective marketing done for that console by far has all been done by the Digital Foundry YouTube channel. And I'm not suggesting that's embarrassing on Sony's part, but I don't think it's a great look.
No, I agree. And what's weird for me as well was they effectively almost retrod the ground, not in the same depth that they did for the announcement of the PlayStation 5 Pro and its stats. I kind of felt like watching this that maybe it would have been better had they not done that PlayStation 5 hardware reveal, a PlayStation 5 Pro hardware reveal as a standalone, and just tacked it on to the end of this state of play. Just because maybe then it wouldn't have got such high criticism that it has received.
Or you take the thing that we're about to talk about, you tack that onto the end of the PS5 Pro reveal, And when you announce this state of play, you do one of the disclaimers, the classic disclaimer saying a state of play focused only on
Right.
PlayStation 5 and PlayStation VR2 titles.
Yeah, why not?
And just do what Nintendo have been doing for like the last 12 months, which is like, yes, we have a new console coming out. No, there will be no mention of it whatsoever in this direct. Like, if they'd done that, then people would have set low expectations. You subtract the game we're about to talk about, and it would have been a D tier, at best, state of play. And people put it to bed because they hadn't got their hopes up, and because they're still running on the high of the thing they saw 2 weeks ago. That's what I would have done.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. But as we've mentioned multiple times, and is in the thumbnail and is in the description of the thing, there was something else, Jamie. Do me a favor, everyone watching, listening, and Jamie, and in chat.
Okay.
Take everything you've just heard, put it in the bin, forget it, move on. Imagine that it happened like 6 months ago and you're not that bothered, because the showstopper, the thing that easily took this from, I think you asked me before the show what would I rate this state of play at, and I said it's an A+. Purely because of this final game. Ghost of Tsushima is indeed getting a sequel, as we all anticipated, but we got to see some of it, and it is called Ghost of Yotei. It is coming in 2025. We got to look at the main protagonist. We got to look at possibly some dual wielding samurai swords. They do have the inclusion of guns, which obviously we didn't have in Ghost of Tsushima. There is a wolf, which plays a pretty meaty part, and I had the same thought. It could well be a companion that you've got in the game, maybe in the same way that you had foxes as like not a companion, but like an accompanying thing in the first game. Maybe this is going to go a little bit harder. It's going to actually give you a fox companion. We've moved from the south of Japan. We've gone all the way up to the north. So this is the Mount of Yotei, as I said. And I think we can kind of get from the trailer that maybe the protagonist is being hunted by the Ronin. And she is going up against them. And my God, does it look good. Like the opening shot in black and white, I was like, what is it the Lonely Island boys say? I jizzed in my pants. Like, come on.
That is what they said. And I think a lot of people, myself included, joined you in celebrating in such a fashion. And like without sounding like a mark, like you're absolutely right. I'm not sure if it brought the state of play up to an A or an A+ for me, but it brought it damn close. And such is the power of PlayStation Studios and the strength of a lot of their IP at the moment. And Ghost of Tsushima is absolutely one of them. And yeah, I reacted similarly to the trailer. I thought it looked really impressive. Kind of exactly what Sucker Punch were able to deliver first time around, where that kind of really nice blend of clearly like a prominent technical prowess in terms of the scale and scope of the environments, the draw distances, the LODs, but at the same time like an adherence to a really strong and eye-catching and cinematic artistic style and presentation. Some of the shots there, like the one where the protagonist was riding through the field surrounded by horses, just really quite breathtaking. An intriguing story premise, like you said. I agree. The vibe I got was that this was kind of a samurai being hunted, or a Ronin being hunted by other Ronins. There's one shot of what appears to be kind of like a wanted style poster, with a sort of a silhouette of the protagonist that has a samurai sword kind of stuck into it. Environments look stunning. I trust Sucker Punch to deliver another meaningful narrative, especially if they've chosen to leave Tsushima and Jin Sakai and all of that stuff behind. Like, hopefully it's because they've got, a new story to tell worthy of exploring a new part of Japan and with a new protagonist. This is immediately become one of my most anticipated games, full stop. Ghost of Tsushima is a game that I loved at the time, and somehow feel like I even love more in retrospect. Like it's a really, really, really great title, and I'm jazzed, truly jazzed that this got announced, and that we can look forward to it properly now.
It reminded me today that I didn't finish the DLC.
Do you know what? I still haven't either. I've got the problem I had. I screwed myself up a little bit when the director's cut came out on PS5. I started playing it, but started a new game, and I am in the third. I got to the third act again, So I've played most of that game twice, and then I fell off just before I got to the new content because so I've played the entirety of the game like 1.8 times, but not played any of the was it Icky Island?
That sounds about right. Icky Island, Itchy Island.
I think believe it is. I believe it is Icky IKI.
Okay. Yeah, like what a game, man. I know. I remember. Hey, I'll hold my hands up. At the time, I think I even said like I didn't think Ghost of Tsushima was going to be all that, and then I played it. I was like, I was so wrong. This game is all that in a bag of potato chips. Like it is. It's impressive in so many ways as well. Like it's not just gameplay, it's narrative, it's tone, it's that feel of I can't remember the name of the director. Like it was that sort of samurai era film feel to it, and the side quests and the narrative.
Kurosawa.
Yes, thank you. And the way that all came together, and even down to like writing those haikus and sitting, meditating, like down to silly stuff like that, which you were just like, oh my god, I love this game so much. Like it just hit every note so well. It did raise a question, I think, for both of us before the pod, and as you alluded to, there's some news which does actually sort of maybe come into play with this as well. What does this do for Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed Shadows? Because finally, it seemed that we were having a feudal era Japanese Assassin's Creed game, which people have been crying out for ages. We then obviously had Ghost of Tsushima and people saying, well, Sucker Punch have already eaten your lunch. But the fact that we had enough time between Ghost of Tsushima and Shadows probably should have meant that it didn't really matter. But we were looking down the barrel of Assassin's Creed Shadows coming out at the back end of 2024. And now we find out Ghost of Yotei is going to be coming out in 2025. We don't know yet when. But a wrinkle has been put into that as well, because it was announced very recently that Ubisoft have actually delayed Assassin's Creed Shadows, and it is going to be delayed until February of 2025. 14th of Feb, to be precise. So you've suddenly got Assassin's Creed Shadows and Ghost of Yotei, the sequel to Tsushima, coming out in the same year. Let's assume February for one, fall for the other. Go autumn, maybe.
Yeah, if I'd imagine if Yotei lands 2025, then it's gonna be fall. I have a tough time imagining it coming out sooner, but I could be wrong.
So, what do you think that does, if anything, to? I literally think there's nothing is going to stop Ghost of Yotei being massively successful. What do you think this does for Assassin's Creed Shadows, if anything?
I don't think it's great news. I mean, we were talking before the podcast. There was actually a conference call today at Ubisoft because, for anyone that hasn't seen, there's lots of Ubisoft-related stuff going on in the news at the moment, in and amongst this delay and them kind of talking a little bit more about the reception that Star Wars got. It was actually a question that was put to Yves Guillemot, the CEO, and he said, I would like to say that there's a lot of space for very high quality games, and those two games can sell very well. And I think if you look at what he said in a vacuum, I agree with him. Like, two high quality products can both sell very well. But this question, put simply, wouldn't be asked of him were it not for some degree of concern that they are going to fundamentally be very similar. And I think the other thing that you're going to have to, one of these two companies is going to have to deal with, whether it's Ubisoft or PlayStation Studios and Sucker Punch, is that the inferior game will have to deal with constantly being compared to the superior game, right?
Yes.
And if track records are anything to go by, and maybe that's slightly unfair because things can change very quickly. But what Assassin's Creed Shadows and what folks at Ubisoft will likely now have to worry about, in addition to direct competition, in the sense that people might not have the appetite for two samurai games in a short amount of time, is the comparisons. You look at the first impressions they make in terms of visual fidelity, just as one bullet point of many, and it's already a race that AC are losing. So now you've got something that's extremely similar, something that occupies the exact, like the same genre, the same setting, might have similar elements in terms of tone, and it remains too soon to speculate on narrative. But that can't be a positive thing for Shadows. It's not one of those things where they help each other. It's not one of those Phil Spencer, we just want the games industry to get bigger in general kind of moments. It doesn't work like that when it comes to unit sales of two individual products. So yeah, I would be slightly worried.
But you have a weird wrinkle, don't you?
The only question you have to ask is if you ask anyone, any director at Ubisoft, would you rather not come out in the same year as Ghost of Yotei? And every single one of them would say yes. And I think that answers the fundamental question of, is it something that you'd rather avoid or not happen? Yes, of course it is.
So I suppose we didn't actually address why the delay has occurred for Shadows. So what we should say is the reason they've given for the actual delay happening itself, because it was supposed to be released in November, is they have said that off the bad launch for Star Wars Outlaws and the state of that at the moment, that they cannot have another bad launch effectively of a game. So they are waiting to effectively get that game polished enough so that rather than release and then polish up some stuff that they probably should have done before release, they are doing probably that they should have been doing and all games companies should probably be doing from the get-go, which is making sure that game comes out in the best possible state it can. And so they're giving themselves a few months to do that. But in so doing, they have now pushed themselves into that same year and possibly, within a half year, few months of another game which could be very similar. Just in case people were unaware as well, Ubisoft have had a big backlash for some of the early stuff for Shadows based on the fact that Yatsuke, the character that they seem to have now, I don't know if this is me, I don't see Yatsuke featured in any of the promo stuff anymore. It's all Nawe. It seems to be like,
I don't know if I see any promo stuff anymore.
I've definitely seen a few things popping up for Ghosts, but it's sorry, for Shadows. But it's it's happening already. Effectively because they had Yatsuke, who is a black guy who wasn't Japanese, and people were complaining and saying that why have they done this, DEI, blah blah blah, Sweet Baby Inc, blah blah blah. So they've already had a hell of a backlash, and so they're starting off, they're in a real bad place. They're starting off on the back foot. They're starting off from a pretty bad run that they've had recently. Star Wars Outlaws obviously compounding that, and then looking down the barrel of Sucker Punch, who released one of like the best PlayStation first party games for, I mean, we talk about it in the same sentences as like Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, Death Stranding, and some other sort of really high level games.
I think it deserves to be in that echelon, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But my God, does it look good? Like, do you think there is effectively gonna be a group of people who maybe may not have boycotted Shadows in reality, but who like to say, "Oh, I don't want to play this game because look what they've done." But now it's become a very real possibility for them to effectively go, "Well, I'm not even going to buy Shadows. I'm just going to wait for Ghost of Yotei." Do you think that happens?
You mean doing so as a form of kind of like backlash against
all the stuff that's gone on already with Ubisoft and with Ghosts of I can't stop saying it, with Assassin's Creed Shadows, because I would have said most, if you've got people saying it's DI, it's Sweet Baby Inc, I'm not playing that, often my brain says they say it, but when the game comes out they're still going to want to play it. It's still an Assassin's Creed game. It's still set in set in Japan. It's still going to be wicked. So you might say it, but do you mean it? But now maybe they can actually not get it.
Again, I think that so much of that chatter exists within a vacuum that usually my rule of thumb is that like the impact that any like perceived boycotts or backlashes have will be almost imperceptible in terms of ultimate sales ultimately. The people out there that would disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But I mean, again, like in my experience working in video game marketing, when these kind of things happen, yes, they are addressed, yes, they are acknowledged. You know, I've been in situations where individual Reddit posts that gain almost no traction are brought up in meetings as things of like, do we need to pivot in terms of how we frame this or the way we discuss that or how we promote this? So, you know, those conversations will be had. But generally speaking, the concern that those marketing, again, it's more about optics and how you market it and how you try to avoid feeding the flames of those fires, as opposed to worrying about, you know, like hundreds of thousands of people not buying your game because it's got a black dude in it or something like that. That said, are there people out there who will maybe be less enthusiastic about Shadows as a result of the existence of Ghost? Very possibly. This probably represents a tiny, tiny fraction of the audiences for these games, but I can tell you, I have a friend who, we have a mutual friend, in fact, who is a huge, huge Ghost of Tsushima fan, massive fan, one of his favorite games for a very long time, has been struggling to find things to play lately, isn't really vibing with a lot of what's out there, and asked me if they should play Rise of the Ronin. And I said, I don't think Rise of the Ronin will give you what you're after as a Tsushima fan. Wait for Assassin's Creed Shadows. That'll probably be the next best thing. That's no longer the case. I don't know how many people that's true for.
Because the time frame, as in, would you still not say, let's say we're in January, we're just after Christmas season of 2025, would you not make that same recommendation, or would you say just wait for Ghost of Yotei?
It would depend on how often these people buy and play games. Again, we're talking to someone right now. We're talking about someone right now that if we brought him into this Discord call and said to him, name all the games you were looking forward to, as many as you can think of off the top of the head, he would say the name of one game. Can you guess what it is?
Ghost of Tsushima 2.
No,
would he not know about that? Right.
He knows about that now because I told him yesterday.
GTA 6?
GTA 6.
Right, okay.
It's the only game that he could tell you that is coming out in the next 2 years that he's looking forward to.
Right, okay.
So, like, again, there are people out there that kind of like fit that bill that just don't play or buy enough games that they would look at, say, a 10-month gap between Shadows and Ghost and say, I can play both.
Oh,
they would look at that. They would look at that and say, well, I'm getting Ghost.
Oh, okay. Again, why would I? I'm already getting the game this year. That's that. Why would I get? I don't need another one.
Now,
okay.
Again, much like my kind of observation about like the potential audience for boycotters or backlashes, I don't actually know any of the numbers. I don't have any numbers to back up any of what I'm saying. It's purely speculation and individual case studies. But yeah, I don't know. All I know is that it's not great for Ubisoft. They're probably not super nervous about it. Probably not regretting their decision. Because what you've said, in a vacuum, what you've said is true. There's space for high quality games.
Yes.
2 games can sell very well. And if the extra work and extra polish that goes in Shadows gets it right up there and gets its reviews looking really good, gets the word of mouth really positive, and there's still 9-10 months to go until Ghost, then they'll probably be fine.
Well, to be fair, it's what we've often said before. Like, if they get to, it comes down to just make a really good game. If you make a really good game,
we said that on the podcast the other week, didn't we?
If
you go out and make like a 92 on Metacritic Far Cry, people are going to buy Far Cry again.
Yes, obviously, like that is notwithstanding review bombing and people trying to like bring it down. People had no intention of ever touching the game anyway. But I think the reality is, you, in those situations, you only have to look at the places you trust and with the review scores that you trust and the people you trust, the content creators online that you trust. If they're all going, oh my goodness, this is the best Assassin's Creed game since Origins, or this is the best Assassin's Creed game since Odyssey, like I absolutely love this, then that even if people do try and review bomb it for other reasons, it's just not going to have any traction because people are going to be talking about how good Shadows is. So I think I'm totally with you in that if they can do what the only thing they need to do is make do what Sucker Punch did, make a really good game set in that era, set in that world, and you shouldn't have a problem.
I mean, it is one of the things that has earned PlayStation Studios, and PlayStation's first party output in general, its reputation is that there haven't been very many bad ones. And people tend to like the bad ones as well, like Days Gone. So
yeah, this is very true. The last thing I should say about Ubisoft, which maybe this will make you think, okay, Ubisoft are saying the right things, they're doing the right things. They have also said, they've committed, which is more than saying, to improving the quality of Star Wars Outlaws following the disappointing launch for the game. And the company have told investors that they want to get the game in a good shape for the key holiday shopping season.
Yeah.
It's one of those weird things that I think we've often talked about, which is like it's not a lot they can maybe do to get it from like that is a good game. I'm currently playing it at the moment. That is a good game. I'm enjoying it. It is not.
I've completely fallen off it for as well. Haven't played it in probably 2 weeks.
Totally fair. But that is a solid 7 out of 10 game, which is enjoyable, which has got a lot of good stuff going for it. But it's not going to become a 9 out of 10 because they put some effort into making it good before Christmas. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, like that's more than just patch, and like because there's some speculation again from the Ubisoft side that like they're hoping to kind of like change the narrative around the game a little bit, and then maybe combine it with some sales and some marketing push around Black Friday, and to try and get Outlaws to kind of be their big game for the end of the year, and to make up some lost ground on sales. But I agree. So the Outlaws did the official Outlaws Twitter account tweeted out today, blah blah blah, prioritizing improvements and changes we will make to the game. We're working hard at creating multiple title updates, which will be optimization, gameplay polishing and tweaks, as well as quality of life changes, including adjustments to combat and stealth gameplay. And then a reminder that their first story pack is coming out on November 21st. I know what you're thinking. They're going to add new contracts that are going to be free for all players. I don't know if this was already a thing or if there hadn't been a date or if they brought the date forward, but also much like they're doing with Shadows, they are reprioritizing having their games on Steam. So right. Outlaws is coming to Steam on November 21st. So yeah.
Which and all that stuff sounds good. And they could absolutely cure a whole bunch of problems with that game. But for me, it all comes down to you make all of those changes, you make those quality of life changes, but you're fixing stuff for people already playing it. You're not pulling in millions of new players because you tweaked some stuff.
No.
Or you added in some new contracts, or you added in like, okay, I'm happy with that. I probably will still be playing it, when they've done that. I doubt I will have finished it by then. It's not something that I feel the need to, like, I really want to play, I really want to go back to. I really want to drive that story on. I'm enjoying it. I don't know. I'm not sure what they think. Maybe what they're thinking is they get it in that good position, and then when you come to Christmas, you get people saying, "What do you want?" Like, because I get this every year. What do you want for Christmas? Because my birthday's that time as well. What do you want for your birthday? And often I'll go to games that I haven't already got that I wouldn't necessarily buy myself.
Yeah.
So maybe they're hoping for that. Maybe they're hoping to soak up some of those numbers, and that's why they're doing it. And they get some. Hey, Star Wars Outlaws is in the best shape it's been since launch. Now's the time to buy, and that's what they're going for. And tied with, like you said, some deals, some sales.
I could see it happening. Yeah. But I agree with you that fundamentally it won't change anything that will, bring back any appeal to people who currently own the game and have sort of like it's lost its luster with them. But that we're not the people they care about. They've got our money, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And we're the only, not we. I don't count myself among them, but you, people like you may come back if they make enough changes, and if people say, hey, they've actually done some real quality of life fixes. They've actually managed to make it so that they've implemented some systems, they've implemented some stealth stuff, they've implemented da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and you think, I would like to experience that, and I already own the game, so why the hell not?
Yeah.
But I think, as we both said, the problem you have is it doesn't bring in more people.
Not necessarily. Well, but Ubisoft, it does feel a little bit reminiscent of the Ubisoft of yore, right? That kind of that belief that we're just going to keep this game running, we're going to keep adding content, we're going to keep supporting it, and hopefully
build it, and they will come.
And to be fair, like, to give Ubisoft credit where it's due, they did used to pull off things like that, and you would get those weird updates where they would release a press release being like, I think I've made this joke before, but like 7 years after the Crew 2 comes out, you get a press release saying the Crew 2 has just passed 10 million units sold, and you're like, what the fuck? I don't know anyone that plays the Crew 2. And like, they probably would love Star Wars Outlaws to become one of those games that very quietly has a very long tail in the way that Ubisoft games used to. So we'll see if they can pull that off.
Well, here's to Eves and Ubisoft doing that.
Good luck, you French weirdos. You're not actually weird. I apologize.
Well, there we go. I happen to. This is an aside. This is kind of irrelevant, but I happened to look the other day on. There was a Reddit post. Someone was asking. I think we've talked about this before. Why ATG finished and why it got taken down. And someone said it got taken down because Jamie got cancelled and they had to pull the channel from YouTube.
That's believable. Not true for anyone wondering, but believable.
Made me laugh. Not the reason.
Fortunately, before we left that company, the majority of our output was pre-recorded and subsequently edited. We did do some live content during the final year of our time there, and I'm sure if you went through that stuff with a fine-tooth comb, you'd find plenty of things that, like, I don't know. I'm not going to suggest we'd be reprimanded for any of it, but all of that stuff has been lost to time. Like tears and rain.
Oh, how poetic. All right. What time is it? It's nearly 12. We've been going for over 2 hours. I was going to say, if you're quick, and I don't think that, I imagine we've got a lot of lurkers. If anyone wants to drop any questions in the chat, we started this last week. We said if anyone's got any questions they want to ask specifically, we will attempt to address them speedy-like before the end of the podcast. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask us about anything we talked about or anything in anything else, drop it in the chat on YouTube. This is not for you if you are listening to this after the fact. This is literally for the 14 people that are currently watching right now.
I don't know if there's going to be any questions, but this is another thing to mention. I don't know when the PS5 Pro pre-orders go live. I only know they go live on the 26th. There's a chance that means midnight UK time. That's how it worked for the PS5 originally.
Oh, so you need to. Oh, I thought it was 2 days. No, it's literally in 10 minutes.
The 26th is in 10 minutes. Yeah, in 10 minutes, the state of play would have been 2 days ago.
Oh, so let's keep Jamie.
So I have got 2 websites open, and I'm refreshing just to see what happens. Because I just don't know when stuff goes live. Because I think with the PS5, if I'm not mistaken, the UK, like we had it weird where we got it later than some other parts of the world. Do you remember that?
So you hold on. So your intention, if it goes live at midnight, is to pre-order?
I'm curious to see if I can. It's one of those things where I'm curious to see if I can. Because you look at the internet of the last couple of weeks, it's been really hard to gauge how well this thing is going to do out the gate. Probably because of weirdos like me who are slagging it off 1 second and buying it the next.
This is what I was going to say. I absolutely guarantee it's going sold out. Like straight as soon as those pre-orders are live, within a day is sold out. And all of us slamming it for the fact that it's no discernible difference between the PlayStation 5. It's going to seem completely redundant because it's going to be like, they sold out a £700 console in an hour and a half.
Yeah, exactly. It would probably be like when you tried to buy Linkin Park tickets the other day. It's just it's an absolute fallacy. You question why you even bother trying. But then the weird part is, I just remember the PS5 pre-order being just weirdly easy.
Okay. No, it was horrible.
Sorry, I'm speaking from personal experience there, where I just remember still being awake and gaming at the time, and it crossing midnight and saying, "I'll just have a look," and going on to, it was Game, the UK retailer, going on saying, "I wonder if this will just let me pre-order it," and I just did it, and it just was like, oh.
So I shouldn't say it was that. I got one. I pre-ordered one and got one from Game and went down and picked it up at midnight. So I shouldn't really say it was that difficult because I managed to get one, and because that was the day when the woman in front of me in the queue asked the man, that blew my mind and it was proof I'm living in a goddamn simulation. She literally said to the guy in Game, "Does it come with 2 controllers?" And he said, "No, it comes with 1." And she said, he's got a PlayStation 4. Will those controllers work? And the guy said, yeah, they work fine. And I stood there having an aneurysm, being like, this is not real. This world is fake. And I wanted to interrupt and say, let me clarify, but I didn't, and I should have done. Anyway, I do have a question coming in from John Meehan, who says, are you guys going to see Oasis?
No, I'm not. My brother is. My dad is. And I was not on the invite list. To be fair, like, I didn't put in a shift to try and get tickets myself. I like Oasis. I like a lot of their music. I listen to Oasis semi-regularly, but it's one of those things where I mentioned the rat race that these mad grabs for tickets often become. Sometimes I just can't be bothered with that stress. I can't, because it's the hope that gets you. I know if I told myself I was going to go for it, then I'd become hopeful that, I've got a chance. I'm going to be in with a shout. And by the end, you're so dejected. You were like, I was never going to get these, was I? I imagine it felt the same for you with Linkin Park. You're like, why did I let myself believe?
Oh,
The game is rigged.
It was a terrible day, and I'm not trying to make too much of a point of it. Like, I'm not trying to over-egg it. I don't mean it was a terrible day because Linkin Park are the greatest band ever, and I wanted to see them reform with a new singer. That wasn't it. That is true. I did want to see them perform, and I would have really liked to go. But the main thing was it was like the teasing promise of the website, and the fact that I was there, credit card in hand, and it was like, you can have these tickets. And then every time I clicked on it, it would be like, sorry, you can't have those tickets. Try again. And I'd be like, okay. And it would be like, you can have these tickets. And I'd try and buy them, and it'd go, no, sorry. Try again. And to go through an hour, 2 hours of that, just for it all to go, oh no, now everything's sold out, and to not really understand what the hell had gone on, to then be in the situation where hundreds of tickets were being sold on resale sites for 5, 6, 7 times the price, really pissed me off. And then the only thing that made me a little bit happy was going onto that ticket site, the resale sites, and seeing that hundreds of tickets were still available the day of the concert, and knowing that loads of those people had lost money.
Yes,
that made me happy.
It's the outcome you hope for in these situations like that.
Fuck them. I didn't say Oasis. I like Oasis as well. I listened to Oasis. I was not about to spend 150 quid on ticket, because 300, because it's I wouldn't have gone my own. I wasn't about to spend 300 quid on Oasis tickets to and go through that rigmarole. But Linkin Park were a little bit different for me, because I was much more into Linkin Park, and also they were only playing one date, and I don't know whether they're going to come around again, and they're not a British band, etc., etc., etc. I liked Oasis, but I was never as into them. I do like their music though. But,
yeah. Should be a good show. Although one of them, it was Liam, I think, performed live before the boxing on the weekend, the Anthony Joshua Daniel Dubois fight, and I thought he sounded a little bit ropey. But I'm sure it'll still be an electric show. Yeah,
maybe, hopefully. I think I'm sure. No, do you know what? I'm sure it will be. I'm sure. Even if they don't sound quite as good as they used to, I think the whole thing will probably be enough for everyone to get excited.
Exactly. Like, all of these old blokes lose their voices at some point, and they still sell out stadium tours. My brother's a big sort of like concert goer and gig goer, and so he's always seeing old bands and like random blokes all the time. Like, I'll be like, "Who are you seeing this week?" He's like, "I'm going to a Jethro Tull concert." And I'm like, how are you? This is a younger brother as well, so I'm like, sometimes I'm bemused at how he acquired and sort of like built out the music taste that he's got, 'cause it's eclectic, but then also like he just likes seeing old blokes who are past their best, and like the kind of people who are like, I'm going to be sat down for most of this.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've seen one or two of those. I really wanted to go see a concert this year. I have not been for ages, and I was like, I want to go to one, and I thought Linkin Park would be brilliant. I'll go to that. Obviously didn't manage to happen, but now I'm kind of liking the idea that I'm going to go see a band who have fallen on harder times, who I like.
Doing like like a really like local venue that's got like a 500 person capacity. And
do you know how I missed the other day? Dizzy Rascal was playing not too
Really?
far from me.
That could have been fun.
And I bet that was wicked. Like I worked a Dizzy Rascal gig back in the day when the day that he released the track Bonkers. I was working for MTV, and I was filming a Dizzy Rascal gig, and I was mounted with camera on a little overhang above all the crazy fans. I had literally the best best seats in the entire house, and it was insane. It was wicked, and absolutely phenomenal. And I was like, I would have loved to have seen Dizzy Rascal, but I didn't know it was happening, and it was literally 5 miles from my house. So, that's a pain in the
shame.
ass.
Next time there'll be something else will come around. Maybe not Dizzy Rascal, but
someone else.
An other.
Yeah.
All right. We're in the final minute, by the way.
What I was going to say, I was dragging this out to see if we can see if it goes live, but I'm now thinking, should we let you go so that you can focus on?
I mean, it doesn't make a difference to me. I can focus on it whether I'm doing it on a podcast.
We'll give Jamie a couple of minutes just to see if it goes live and see if he can buy one live on stream.
There is a part of me that again is regretful of the painful irony of some of the ranting I did earlier and the fact that I am doing what I'm doing at the moment. I should also add, I'd be a little bit surprised because it's the PS5 Pro, but I believe also the 30th anniversary collection. I'd be a little bit surprised if it was all internationally set to go live at midnight. BST?
Yeah.
So I have my doubts that this is actually going to go live as I'm refreshing it.
Would you go for the?
I'm not sure.
Would you go for the old school design, or would you go for the new?
I don't know.
We're past 12 now, aren't we? It's just gone.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't look like, again, unless because the other thing is the usually when something big is releasing, the PlayStation Direct store or direct.playstation.com has like a queue to get in, and that is not happening.
Right.
So my gut feeling is that it is not a kind of a midnight pre-order situation as we had with the PS5. Probably because, as I mentioned, this is a console that I think is launching in most regions simultaneously. So the pre-order time will probably be more tuned to an American market, an American audience. I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah, I'm checking as well, but I cannot see that it's available.
Yeah.
Oh, Kotaku 3 hours ago. We still don't know what time PlayStation 30th anniversary pre-orders start.
Yeah. And having the 30th anniversary stuff and the PS5 Pro stuff happen at the same time is also... I mean, I think it was a necessity because there is a 30th anniversary PS5 Pro, so I think they couldn't really have one go... apparently there's a... I
was going to say, it's 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time.
I was going to say that PlayStation UK... I'm just going to fact check this live. PlayStation UK appear to have replied to someone saying that someone asked them what time is it coming out in every time zone, and they just replied 10 a.m. Now that's the PlayStation UK Twitter account, but they haven't clarified whether that means again 10 a.m. PST.
1 a.m. So this suggests that 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time is 1 o'clock British summertime. So you will need to wait 1 hour, Jamie, for those pre-orders to go live.
Where are you getting the Australian time from?
So that was from IGN.
IGN?
That was from IGN 2 hours ago. They have said, it's finally official.
Is this on Twitter?
No, this was just an article that they uploaded 2 hours ago. So it said, it's finally officially here almost. The PlayStation 5 Pro will be available to pre-order in Australia today, more specifically at 10 a.m. AEST. Better yet, today's the day you can also try to secure some 30th anniversary themed hardware, which is all limited numbers stuff. Does it give it any other times anywhere?
If IGN is saying 10 a.m. Australian time and PlayStation UK are saying 10 a.m. as well, Does that mean 10 a.m. local time on a per region basis?
which would mean that the Australians can order it first.
No, I'm saying like when you go to direct.playstation.com, I get put through to the /en/GB version of the site. Does that mean that like the UK retailers and the UK version of the PlayStation Direct store, like it will be 10 a.m. each time? So yes, they will be first,
Yeah.
but not in a way that. But then it becomes a thing of like,
Yeah, they'll be
how
first.
much?
They'll be 9 hours ahead of you. They'll for 9 hours. The Australians will have it, and then we'll have it, and then the Americans will get it 8 hours after us.
How fascinating!
Well, if that's how it works. A couple other comments coming in just before we stick a fork in this.
Yeah.
Vigilant Knight saying, so do you like AC Shadows? Not played it, so don't know. I'm 100%, no, not 100. I'm 90% going to get it. I have had love for Assassin's Creed games my entire life. AC1 was like blew my mind. And I think they've done a phenomenal job over the years. I've fallen off with a few of them. They've lost some of that Assassin's Creed spark, I would say, for me. But how could you not get an Assassin's Creed game set in Japan? Like when we've been saying from number 2, like holy hell, how good would a game be if you got to play as a samurai or as a ninja or as whatever. Yeah, I'm all about it. I'm also replaying Odyssey at the moment, and having a really good time with that. And I'm a big Ubisoft fan. I think they're a fantastic developer, publisher. I think they're wicked. They've not been great of late, but we ebb and we flow.
We do.
So there we go.
Ubisoft at their best is something that is, I think. Well, I mean, I think the industry is. I want to say that I'm tempted to say the industry is better off for it. That's maybe a little bit too sweeping, but we should all want to see Ubisoft kind of at their best. For no matter what you think about some of their game design principles and kind of almost the tropes that are associated with Ubisoft, for which I think they have occasionally been partly responsible for. I've loved loads of Ubisoft games over the years, and I don't want them to stop making them. So,
agreed. The only other thing to mention is John Meehan said, "Wow, Jamie looks so crestfallen."
Yeah, well, I was sorry. I was gearing myself up for it. I was like getting ready to fight off the fucking what are they called? The people that buy it to sell it. The
scalpers.
The scalpers. Thank you. I was ready to club them off with both arms, and I was gonna, yeah, but not to be.
Just gonna.
I think it's by most accounts it sounds like it's tomorrow, and you know what? Again, I'm fascinated to see how it goes. I do worry that it will be like a bit of a scalping beehive, just because the PS5, at launch was so notorious for how much people struggle to get their hands on it, and the sort of supply and demand issue there. But we'll see.
Apparently, there are only 12,300 limited edition Pro models being released worldwide, and they're all going to be individually numbered.
Yeah, that's what they do for the anniversary consoles.
That seems like not enough.
It is what it is. I do not have my heart set on one of those in particular because I think that's just asking for trouble.
No, I think I would agree with you. The Express, the newspaper website, they're saying 10 a.m. British Standard Time.
I'll wake up tomorrow morning and see what the score is.
And they would have gone live at 1 a.m. and they're all sold out. And now no, I'm only joking. We won't put that into the ether, Jamie.
If it's sold out, it's sold out. The thing about the PS5 Pro versus the PS5 is that, like, if you didn't get a PS5 in time, you were stuck on a PS4. New games were coming out. In some cases, you couldn't play them at all. You didn't have a DualSense. You didn't have any of that stuff going on. When the PS5 Pro comes out, if I can't get my hands on one, I'll be sat there thinking, man, I can't play a game I've already played at a higher frame rate or a higher resolution. There'll be no love lost if I have to wait until next year to get a PS5 Pro, trust me.
No, I think that's the way to look at it. Thank you for co-hosting like an absolute
Thank
legend
you,
as
Jonesy.
always. Thank you everyone for sticking with us and watching this over 2-hour episode of the Super Show podcast. And we will see you again next week for some more video gaming goodness. I think that's all there is for me to say.